All right. Hopefully, I'm not using a crazy microphone. Okay. Sorry, my voice mod is on, so I just had to make sure I wasn't using any
Of my crazy voices, like this one right here.
Anyways, hope you guys are having a wonderful night. Um, I have been super excited for a couple days now about this, but also, pardon the beard. I accidentally used a guard that was too small today. I have not had a face like this in a while, like pre-COVID, I think. So, anyways, really, really excited about everything going on right now with Palladium Books. Those of you who have followed my channel since its beginning, you know that I'm a big Palladium fan. In fact, I was known for a long time as the Palladium guy among the RPG Brigade and among a lot of the YouTubers that I am friends with. And got a lot of people into Palladium Books about 6 years ago. We were running games online, through the One Shot group. It was a really popular thing to run games online of Palladium, whether that was riffs, splicers. I don't run splicers, but I run mostly Heroes Unlimited. I've run riffs and other things. Recently, about 4 months ago, I ran a one shot of riffs with my patrons and Discord members. O'Neill Flynn actually played in that game. I believe that was his first time playing Palladium. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me in the chat. But I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. When Savage Worlds published Savage Rifts the first time, I bought the full set, the whole box set with the slip cover here. All the stuff, all of it. I got all three of the books, the core books in it. The bookmarks, the decks of cards, for Savage Rifts, even the action adventure decks. I printed out the art for the DM screen inserts and stuff that they have. All sorts of stuff. Bought a bunch of other Savage Worlds things as well that is really cool. I got the special dice that I use from time to time. I got the poker chips that came with it. These bad boys. So these are bennies. If you're not familiar with Savage Worlds, you get bennies. You can spend them to do cool stuff like soak wounds, and these are the riffs, the Savage Rifts ones with the Savage Rifts art. So you got the Skelebots and whatever other art there is. So really cool, and I actually really like the Savage Rifts adaptation of riffs. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite. It's not. I'm not a huge Savage Worlds fan. I kind of wish that they would remove some of the gimmicks associated with it, and to me, then Savage Worlds would be a better game. But I didn't hate how they did it. And when I went to GenCon 50 back in 2017, my father had passed away before day one, and the doors opened. And I was scheduled to play in a game at one of the hotels with my friend Brett, who is friends with Sean Patrick Fannin. And this wasn't my first time playing with Brett or Sean Patrick Fannin. And we played that game that night, and it was a little tough, but I needed it. And Sean Patrick Fannin did sign all of my books. So the Game Master's Handbook says make them legends. The Savage Foes of North America says the journey goes on, may you and yours know peace. Because everybody knew what I was going through. And everyone was cool. They didn't make a big deal about anything. They were all just there to game and try to help me lift my spirits. So it was cool. And then the Tomorrow Legion's Player's Guide says, be tomorrow's legend. So very cool. These mean a bit to me, and I'll always have that day one memory of my first GenCon 50, playing some Savage Rifts and being able to escape a little bit at a tough time for me, But yeah, the DM screen's gorgeous for Savage Rifts, So I don't play Savage Rifts. I don't anymore. Again, it's a game I would play. I'll probably play it again down the line with my kids and stuff. But yeah. So with that, I do appreciate Rifts, the core rule book is pretty cool. The Ultimate Edition. And I'm going to sit here and tell you guys, being a big Palladium Books fan since 1997, I was 12 years old getting into Palladium Books. And we'll get into the news here in a minute of what's going on over at Palladium and why I'm so excited. But being into Palladium Books since 1997, I played... So I met a guy in the neighborhood. He was a friend of my uncle's from high school. He was about 26. My mom was a pool attendant because we lived in an apartment complex. And he brought his soon-to-be stepdaughters to the pool a lot. And so then my mom introduced me, obviously, and found out he was a comic book nerd. He loved riffs. And so he talked to me about his role-playing games and things like that. And my mom, at the time, was just getting over the whole, D&D's demonic and things like that. In fact, she threw out 2 of my Hero Quest board games in previous years to that time. When I was like 8 and when I was 9, she threw it out. Actually, I may have been 7 or so. It may have been like 92 or something. But anyway, so I met him and started talking to him. And the easiest way for him to get me into the game was he gave me his copy of this. Now, I know the green screen's messing this up. You can see it over my shoulder here. TMNT. Another strangeness. But this was, I believe, the very first role-playing game I ever owned. It may have been the blue Heroes Unlimited, which I still love the equipment section in this book. And it's way better, equipment-wise, than the newer book that came out in 1997. So this book was $20 back in the day. And it's an awesome book. I have made, with these 3 books alone that I just held up, TMNT and Heroes Unlimited, I've probably made hundreds of characters. And it's something that while I struggled to find people to play it through my teen years, I still had a ton of fun making characters. My mom would take me up to Writer's Hobby and I would look at the books and I'd buy them. I remember my first set of dice, picking out each individual die. I had no idea how many I needed. I had no idea what shapes I actually needed. And so I just picked ones that I thought were cool. I bought way too many D6s, not enough of other dice. But I did have all the dice that I needed. And, so that was a big deal to me. And, I've said it before, I got this for Easter. And it's always been, again, a very special book to me. Heroes Unlimited is my favorite Palladium Books game line. I played that first campaign we played. I was an alien out of the Heroes Unlimited book and Aliens Unlimited. And we ended up going to, I was landing on Earth near West Virginia, that area. And as I was coming down in my spacecraft that was crashing, we started getting attacked by a government agency that's out of the Aliens Unlimited book. And then we ended up in a rift, like some kind of like a tornado or a hurricane or some sort that pulled us into a rift, and we ended up in rifts. It wasn't exactly what I had hoped for, but honestly, it was okay. So then I ended up in rifts. Now, I did not own this book until much later. Probably around 2010, I think, is when I got this, maybe 2011. When I started really diving back into... Actually, yeah, it was 2010, that Christmas, where I really started diving back into Palladium Books. I was exclusively Palladium Books, though, that whole time. But I didn't have but 3 books most of that time. I didn't need anything other than TMNT and Heroes Unlimited in that time. So in 2010, I got Rifts. That's when I bought Aliens Unlimited. That's when I bought some other stuff. I did a few grab bags. Got a bunch of Powers Unlimited books, and by a bunch I mean 3, because that's what there are. These books, in combination with the core Heroes Unlimited book, you can make, I think, any character from a comic book you want. Now, there's some limits. You cannot, make a character as strong by the rules as, say, Superman. You cannot make anybody as fast as the Flash by the rules. But that's okay. And if you play with a loose DM, like I consider myself a loose DM or GM. If my players, that's their concept, I'll let them do things like that. I'll let them stretch the rules to do something cool. In fact, I think if you are playing Palladium, I actually like running it more loose anyway. I don't like it being rigid. So, but that's just me. Indigo Dragon, welcome, buddy. So again, Palladium Books, again, has always been something very near and dear to me. It always will be. I'll always have a fondness. I'll always have a passion for it. I was active on the forums for a long time. I believe I went by my old username on there. It's now, I think, Juce734. I haven't been on those forums, I think, in a while. But I used to run games in the Palladium Books chat room on their website. Riffs, Heroes Unlimited. I played in a Palladium Fantasy game out in Taylor, Michigan a few years. I think it was Taylor. No, it was Livonia. As recently as like 7 years ago, played for a short amount of time with them. And it was like a group of like 8 to 10 people. It was a pretty big group. And really enjoyed that. That's actually what got me loving Palladium Fantasy at the time. So, and I like the fact that the system is portable to other things. Like you can play fantasy, you can play horror, you can play post-apocalyptic, superheroes. I like that. And you can take a character from any of those, put them in another one, and they just fit into the setting, I mean, the power level is fine. So, like a superhero character is probably going to be more powerful than anybody in Palladium Fantasy, but you don't have to tweak it. It just works in that setting. So it's just going to be more powerful. But again, if you play Palladium Books, there's not really a lot about balancing encounters. In fact, I don't think there's anything about it. The Heroes Unlimited books don't tell you, there is no CR system. It's literally you take a villain you like and you use it against the heroes, and that's it, You kind of have to use your own, how to explain it? I feel like if you're not familiar with the system, it basically is up to you running the game how to start, how to just facilitate the game. Because you can kill characters, right? You end up in comas and things like that. But it's not always about killing, right? It's about the bad guy at least getting away with the crime he's committing. Like that's more important in a lot of instances. Maybe you have a sadistic villain, though, based on their alignment. The alignment system is great in Palladium. I think it's far better than the rigid Dungeons and Dragons alignment system. But Palladium has its flaws. It does. I mean, all of us know it. Even the creators know it. And, I've talked about on this channel how I would change the system many times. I've done it in chats like this, and I've done videos on it. And while my ideas have changed over the years, and they continue to change since even the last time I did it, some things still remain the same for me. And, for example, one of the things that I think, at least speaking for myself, if they ever do a new system, which, again, it's a big if, but I feel like it's not necessarily too far away from happening if it does. If they do, I think us fans, again, speaking for myself though only, want a system that can play the different things. Fantasy, superheroes, post-apocalyptic, and things like that. Beyond the supernatural. I think that's what us fans would want, speaking for myself. Now, I know I said that a few times, but I will say too, if you like Savage Riffs or Savage Worlds, then those aren't going away. So that's the great news. No matter what, that's sticking around. So, Victor, welcome, buddy. Oh, okay, cool. Well, I hope work's going okay for you. Victor's my resident Palladium Books fan with me, so we've talked about it a lot in the past. Haven't seen Victor in a while, so it's good to see him there. Indigo Dragon says, Savage Rifts got me to start buying Palladium Rifts books again. Yeah, I almost started doing that as well. I have not bought a Palladium Books game since before Savage Rifts. Again, back in 2014, I think 2015 or 16 may have been the last time I bought a Palladium Books game. And it was probably a grab bag. I had the whole Palladium Fantasy set, and I wanted the last few books at the time that they were promised to come out, And that's the other thing. And again, this is something that came up this weekend. Palladium's known for not hitting deadlines, unfortunately. But I really wanted certain books. I wanted the Land of the Damned 3. I wanted Yinsloth Jungle's new edition. I wanted the Byzantium Empire, which wasn't out yet. I wanted the Gardens of the Gods, Phi and Lopan. I wanted it all. I wanted the complete setting for Palladium Fantasy, and it wasn't out yet. So I kind of gave up and haven't bought anything since from Palladium. But again, I've run games still. I've still promoted it. And when I promote it to people, I just say, look, guys, get into it. Love the system if you do. Don't get your hopes up on the release schedule, ever. And as long as people, I think, have clear expectations up front, they can't get mad about it, right? And people understood, and it made sense. So the big news. I know you guys came to hear about this. So over the weekend, Palladium Books had an announcement. I believe it was made on the Pinnacle Entertainment Group Twitch channel, and it may have been I think it may have been streamed also on the Palladium Books YouTube channel. Maybe been simulcast. I don't know if it was or not. I had heard about the news. I did not watch it live. I did last night watch the full thing in its entirety, and I have to say, while the announcement, for me, I was really excited about it. I love the announcement. I do know there are people who are not thrilled about it. I do know there are some people who are ecstatic about it. And it seems like there's a couple different camps of Palladium Books fans. You have the fans who love everything Palladium Books has done and hope that nothing changes, and they like the products the way they are, and they hope it stays that way. And those people are not happy. And you have other people who have been upset about the deadlines, who have thought maybe a rehash of the rule, a complete redo of the rules would be great. People that want it to step into 2021. Those people who seem relatively optimistic. I am in that camp. I, again, totally love Palladium Books and want that company to succeed. Now, the news was, again, it was a little bit shocking. But the actual news was that Sean Robertson, who has been working on the Savage Rifts game line, I believe he even worked on these. Sean Patrick Fannin originally did these, but I believe Sean Robertson had a hand in these as well. But either way, he's been running the current Kickstarter of Palladium Books, and the Atlantis and things like that. So again, I know that people who love Savage Worlds are extremely excited. Is Kevin's interview with Pinnacle online to watch anywhere? So yes, it is on. It is over on the Palladium Books YouTube page. It's the most current video, and I can share that if you want here in a little bit. I'll post the link in the chat at the end of this here, probably in about 30 minutes. It's about 2 hours, and it's not just Kevin, though. It's Sean as well, and there were a lot of good takeaways, I think, from the interview. One, right off the bat, it seems like they have a great working relationship. Kevin, in typical Kevin fashion, he gets excited about ideas, and some people will ask questions about things that, of course, he's thought about over the years. Like, hey, have you thought about doing this product? And when will we see this book come out? And things like that. And Kevin gets excited about these things. It's hard not to get excited about the creative process. It's hard not to get excited about game worlds that you have invested so much time into and passion, and you want to give people a finished product. It's hard not to get excited about that. And so Kevin does have a tendency to say stuff like, oh yeah, it's at this phase and we'll be done with it in a couple months, something like that. So if you guys are just tuning in, please give us a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. We cover Palladium books. We cover a variety of game systems. So I would appreciate the support. And if you guys want to see more Palladium books content, I will happily do that. I'm probably going to talk about some of the system stuff that I'd like to see here in a minute as well. But Sean was announced as the full-time Palladium Books creative director and heir to the Palladium Books empire. Assuming things go well. If things go really well, Kevin basically has said that if it goes as expected, he will hand the keys to the car over to him over time. If something ever happens to Kevin, he's on board with Sean taking it over. Now, again, if you're not a fan of Savage Rifts and you don't want Palladium Books to change, this could be a scary thought for you, right? Because Sean comes from Savage Worlds. Yes, he is an old school Rifts fan. He played Rifts in the Air Force. He's a big Rifts fan. That's what I took away from this interview. I hadn't seen a lot about Sean before. I've watched a couple things about Savage Rifts, Atlantis and stuff, but I've kind of partially paid attention before. This big announcement piqued my interest, like a lot, as somebody, again, who wants them to succeed. So some of the other takeaways, though, are that Sean and Kevin, the way they operate is opposite. Sean is very, from my impressions, Sean seems very organized. He seems like somebody who understands the process from start to finish of a big-time publishing company. He's worked for Games Workshop. He's worked for Pinnacle Entertainment Group with Savage Worlds. And I'm sure he's worked for a bunch of other things, and I just don't know. But he seems like somebody who's very organized and can bring that level of professionalism and focus to a company that I don't know if they've ever truly had that. And I say that, with love, as, again, somebody who cares a lot about Palladium. Palladium has a bad reputation, and it's something that I think that they don't want to have. And I think their intentions have always been good. I just don't think they've always executed well. And I think Sean knows how to execute and knows how to rally the troops, per se, and put people in a position to succeed. And that's the vibe I got from the interview. In fact, there were times, again, Kevin would start to make a promise or start to say a timeline, and Sean would stop him. Now, there were some interesting things, though, that were said that Sean also said. They have a solid 5-year business plan, it sounds like. It wasn't explicitly said, but, well, the thing that was explicitly said is they are open to all things when it comes to a brand new Palladium system or an overhaul or a rehash or however you want to word it. I'd have to go back and get the exact wording, but it sounded like that is on the table as a potential thing. It also sounded like they have a log of books they want to complete before they do something like that, which is exciting as hell for me. Because while I can run a fun Palladium Books game right now for a modern gamer or a younger gamer, I don't think it's easy or natural for somebody new to RPGs to jump into one of these books and play it and jump and know what they're doing. It's a little bit overwhelming. I think back to the first time I ever tried to run it without knowing the system and, things like that. And again, people that are well-versed in tabletop RPGs who come from 4th edition D&D, 3.5 D&D, and other games who I got into Palladium, who bought the books and then thought they were going to run it and struggled, I know it's hard for them as well. And, again, I got my wife into it. She came from AD&D, and when I first met her, I didn't realize she was a gamer, and I ran Heroes Unlimited for her. She ran AD&D for me. And AD&D was far simpler. And trying to teach her, how Palladium was a little bit difficult trying to teach my brother-in-law and my sister and other people as well. It was a hurdle, and one of the biggest hurdles was the organization. And one of the things Sean and Kevin alluded to is a better layout and organization of books. And I think Sean can bring that to the table. I really do. I don't think we're going to see over time the copy and paste from old books, in a way that doesn't make sense. I think books are going to be laid out differently. I think they're going to use more modern technology and softwares to make these things happen, and things like that. Now, I know a while back, I don't know how long ago now, but Kevin and Palladium were using a very old school way of doing layout design, and I believe you can buy the original prints and things of how they would send it off to the printer and stuff. Used to be able to get it on Kevin's like eBay page and stuff, and sometimes with like the Christmas grab bags. So all super exciting news to me, as somebody who wants to see them grow. I don't know how big their fan base is or their active current customers are, but I hope that this news does spark some inspiration in the fans. I hope that it does drive the fans to at least keep an eye on them again and see what's down the pipeline. I don't think we're going to get promises, in the weekly update emails, every week of deadlines and, this ships then and this ships then, and you'll get this book that I'm working on in 3 months or 2 months. Like, I don't think we're going to see that anymore. I think you'll get updates on what they're doing and the steps in the process, but I don't think you're going to find out that any like actual deadlines until it's done. Now, as someone who talks to a lot of people in the industry, I interview people. I interviewed someone with Modifius last night. I've interviewed people at Paizo, Green Running Publishing, all over. I've interviewed a bunch of people in the industry. I've learned a little bit about some of the behind the scenes stuff, and most of them are very tight-lipped on what the next project is. They're also very tight-lipped on the due dates, like public due dates. Like, oh yes, this will be shipping then. You'll get like vague things for maybe two products over the course of like a year or two, right? And that's something Palladium's never done. They've always said, oh yeah, here's 7 things, in the pipeline. And again, I think it's been great, and it's also been very bad. Like if you're a fan who's optimistic and you see, oh yeah, Land of the Damned 3 is coming out, this is going to be awesome, and then, years go by without it, you lose your faith in the company. So I don't think that's going to be a concern moving forward. Sounds like they're bringing the Rifter back. I have, like 15 Rifters over there that I bought for Heroes Unlimited content in them, like the sidekicks and things like that. I also bought it for some of the Heroes Unlimited adventures, like the one that took place in Chicago. I can't think what it's called. It's like the Registration Act one. I tried to run it on the channel. It didn't work out well. Group scheduling and things like that fell apart after one session, unfortunately. Still want to run that someday, so I might down the road. Because it gave me a very Marvel, like X-Men feel. And that's like some of my favorite superheroes is the X-Men. So, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll try to answer the best I can. I am not an employee or affiliated at this time with Palladium Books, but would love to open that door and have a relationship with them down the line. I have relationships with other companies, and again, would love to be affiliated with this brand. So again, I just want to see them succeed. I want to see them do the right things. I want to see them make great products. I want to see them make a system that doesn't get the flack that their current system gets. And again, I think a lot of that's based on the layout and organization, but there are natural flaws with the system. And if you disagree, feel free to reach out to me and we can discuss it. But I think Sean and them are listening. I think they realize it. And, I had talked to Kevin at Grand Con 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. And we talked about things like the direction for the game system. And at the time, I think he was hearing from people that Pathfinder First Edition was a great game, and to look at that for how to do the next, Palladium system. And so he was listening to that from some people. And I'm glad that didn't happen. As somebody who likes Pathfinder, I do not want to see it go down that path. I would like to see it go away from crunch a little bit and go more towards a smoother system to play. And I think you can do that. And so I think, and I've talked about this before, the number one thing that I feel like Palladium Books is, and I'm going to tell you guys what I would like to see with the system. The number one thing for me when I am talking to somebody about, hey, do you want to play this game, is the active defense system. Having the action economy be something that is part of the strategy or the tactics of the combat aspect. That's something I like. The other thing I like that I also dislike is the options. And what I mean by that is I love the character creation options for Heroes Unlimited. I love it for Rifts. I love being able to build things to do certain things. So, in Heroes Unlimited, you pick your powers and you can pick all these things. The thing I hate is how specific all of the skills are. I would like that stripped down and be more broad and general. So, for example, and I've got a whole sheet of notes here on what I would like with the system. When I was listening last night, I was jotting down my ideas. So I think I actually would like it if they had 10 attributes. I'm going to tell you guys what I wish they were. Strength, agility, speed, constitution. Those are the physical ones. And then I would like, and those are 4. I would also like intelligence, wisdom, willpower, and charisma. And then I would also like horror and beauty. And the reason I like those is because you can have both of those. You could be a demon, but also be very beautiful, but you could be scary. So horror doesn't necessarily mean you're ugly, but it could. And beauty doesn't necessarily mean you're, like, if it's low, doesn't mean you're scary. So again, I think that would be cool. I'm not sure if I think I would want it to just be a hit point system as well. So you'd have 10 attributes and hit points. You would also have magic points, which I would just call mana instead of inner strength points. Or no, that's potential psychic energy. And I would have mana and I'd have psychic points, 2 separate pools. Or you could use the same pool. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, but I think 2 separate pools would be better. And I do still want it to be class-based. And the way I would break up the action economy, rather than you building up new attacks. So for example, you would have a movement action, a quick action, a regular action. Some very rare things would require a whole round of action. So maybe you're working some kind of machinery, and that would be just a full round action. You would lose everything else to do it. And then reactions. Now, you're probably asking, well, if you don't have multiple actions, how do you do an active defense? And that's with your reactions. Now, in Palladium now, say Rift, certain classes, because they have so many actions, say a Juicer, might have 8 or 10 actions per round, whereas your normal mercenary might only have 4 or 5. And so, as a mercenary, you're not going to be able to block as much, because then you lose your actions. Well, in this way I've envisioned it, you would use your reactions to defend yourself. O'Neill Flynn says, you very need another play. Oh, I think it just misspelled it. You ever need another player for a Palladium game, let me know. I will do that. That's high praise, because I know you played that game, and that means you had a lot of fun, I think. So I love hearing that, man. I will keep that in mind. And I might work on this more. I like the idea of making my own system, so I might turn this into something, and maybe I'll play test it with you. But so you would have, say, as a Juicer, you might be able to react to more than one action. you also might get an ability that's an auto parry or an auto dodge. Those would be considered special abilities or special talents or, gifts, whatever you want to call it. So again, I think that would make the action economy much more understandable. Your speed score would dictate how far you can move total in a round, and that would work towards your movement. Things like that. Also, again, so I like the active defense. That is what Palladium is to me. I also think damage reduction from armor is what Palladium Books is. I also think you need to have a way to incorporate MDC. So I would definitely have a way to do that, and I would take sort of what Savage Worlds has done, or Savage Rifts has done. I like that you'll have like certain armor piercing things. So you still have like SDC weapons, MDC weapons, and so if you have an MDC weapon, it hurts everybody equally. Whereas an SDC weapon just doesn't bypass MDC armor. It's really simple and intuitive. And certain armors might only be a certain reduction, like an MDC 2. So it only takes off 2 MDC. I believe that was how Savage Rifts works. I haven't played it in a couple years, but I like that. So I would definitely do damage reduction from the armor. Because again, I think that's a good way, and I like how Savage Rifts did that. I would probably also work in some kind of wound system, where you lose all your hit points and now you suffer permanent wounds or something along those lines. So you don't necessarily die at 0 hit points, but you can now suffer wounds, go into a coma, and have some kind of rules for something like that. Magical healing would not just get you back up on your feet and up again. With spells, right? So spells is something that I don't like how magic or psionics were really implemented in Palladium before. Some of it was really cool, some of it not so much. I always felt like it was inferior to like the super abilities or even some of the things in Rifts that are always on and always, workable. But one of the things I think would be cool is if say you have I'm going to just pull a spell. You have a healing spell. It would be cool if that cost you, say, 2 mana to do a healing of whatever, 1d6 hit points. And maybe you could upcast it with more mana or spend more mana to do an area of effect with it or spend more mana to resurrect somebody. So rather than choosing another spell later on that's resurrection, which maybe you could still do, and it's less mana than if you're upcasting this as a resurrection. So you have some ways you can pick a spell, and as you get further up in level, rather than taking a spell that does one of those properties, which will cost less mana, maybe you want to get an offensive spell, so things like that, having some versatility with your spells, I just think is cool. Now, again, this might make it feel more crunchy as a game system, but I think if it's done right, it's not going to feel crunchy. It's still going to feel very intuitive and easy. And spellcasters are always a little bit more difficult. Same thing with like a psionics character. So, your more advanced players should be able to play something like that. I think you're going to need solid ship combat rules, vehicle combat, power armors, because again, Rifts. You got things like the Glitter Boy, which O'Neill Flynn played in our game and wrecked some stuff. I think you need some underwater combat rules, and maybe those aren't too different from aerial combat. I think you got to put some attention into travel rules. I think you're going to have different types of damage. So I like the idea of rather than the only difference of weapons being the damage, I think they should have some sort of properties associated with them. Indigo says, I know of other RPGs with spell systems like that. Yeah, and I mean, there probably are. There's thousands of RPGs out there. And I think that makes it more fun, and I would be more interested in playing spellcasters if you had that versatility. And again, I know not everyone's going to agree with me, and I don't think if you ever redo a game system, I don't think you can make everybody on both sides of the aisle happy. You're looking to keep as many of them happy as possible. You're looking to keep it still feeling like a Palladium book system, but cleaner and something you can introduce to new players. the next generation of gamer, if you don't, if you will. So yeah, I think like weapon properties would be cool. You're going to have, your normal hand-to-hand weapons. So what differentiates a sword from an axe or a staff? I think they should do something more than just damage. Certain weapons, if you're parrying it, should cut your hands off. In fact, I actually think parrying should also lead to damage reduction like armor. So rather than just you blocked it and nothing happens, like depending on what you're hit with and how much damage it deals, you can absorb so much of it. I think that would be kind of cool because like if someone's punching you, you go to block it, there's a chance you break your arm, or break your hand blocking it. So I know Palladium fans like, realistic stuff, and this is one of those more crunchy aspects that I do want it to have. I think that would lend itself to that. Now, part of the active defense, though, doesn't have to be a counter roll. It could just be a static number. Like maybe your armor class is, stealing from other systems. Maybe your armor class is 14, but when you parry, it's 16 or 15 or whatever. Maybe when you dodge as a juicer, you get a +5 to your dodge, to your AC then. But when you do that, you lose half your movement for the next round because you're out of position or something, or maybe you lose 5 feet of movement because of it. Because I think the other thing is gamers like miniatures. Not all. I do. I like playing both. I do both on my channel for a variety of games. I use Theater of the Mind for D&D, but I also use miniatures. I love miniatures. But I think a new Palladium system, if it had rules that worked well within miniature play, again, you're bringing a whole new audience into it. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we want? We want new players. We want Palladium to thrive so they can pay more artists, more writers, more people to work inside the building and grow the company so we get more products, better quality products. Isn't that what we want? That's what I want. That would be great. And then you'll start seeing more tools. They were talking about D&D Beyond the other night and Fantasy Grounds and Roll20 and stuff like that, and how a lot of that's not supported because basically Palladium's just not big enough. They didn't say that explicitly. They said that's up to those platforms to reach out and make those things happen for the integration. But to me, that means, well, Palladium doesn't have a big enough piece of the pie to warrant, that development. Because it's for those, virtual tabletops, they have to weigh, is it worth our time and money to invest in this? Are we going to get our money back or make enough of a profit to justify it? Or are we better off, spending our resources over here to promote this new game or whatever, So that's just what I think about that. So when it comes down to it, I guess there's a lot of things that I think are coming, and there's a lot of things I love about the system. And I'm really excited to see what Sean does with it. I would love to have Sean and or Kevin on the channel to talk about it. Not something like I wouldn't press them. Like I'm a very honest person, but I wouldn't press them on anything. I wouldn't try to do any gotchas or anything like that. Again, I love Palladium. I want to see him succeed. It's important to me. Indigo says, I think a lot of your ideas could easily be split into having both a basic combat system and advanced combat rules. Oh, yeah, like optional rules, right? Like the parrying being a damage absorption could be a whole nother layer. It could be the optional advanced rule. Things like that. I completely agree. But I don't want it to be like, I want the basic to also be incorporated into the advanced if you did something like that. And that's where you get into, again, as more people play the game, having those options is better. If you don't have a large audience, then you don't need a bunch of optional rules because now, again, when you go to a convention, everyone plays it different, and that's not much different than how things have been. The way I run it is probably completely different than, the way you run it, Indigo, and the way you and I run it is probably different than the way Victor runs it, Victor Snyder up there. But at the end of the day, I think we all want the same thing, right? We just wanted to make a good product and people to be happy to talk about it and play it. And spend their money on new things that benefit the company, which benefits the hobby, and things like that, right? Yeah, like, I mean, I said, yeah, it'd be cool if you could do grid plays, if there were rules that supported it a little bit. And that, to me, is always optional, whether it's D&D 5e or Pathfinder or well, I don't think Call of Cthulhu has it. I play Call of Cthulhu on my Twitch channel, but we do Theater of the Mind. I don't think there's actual grid play rules. But, like Mutants and Masterminds has grid play rules, and, Savage Rifts technically has rules for using miniatures. I think it can happen. I'm really excited about it. I think currently, though, their current fan base, I do think leans old school. The ones that have hung on and are still, purchasing their products right now, I do think their current audience leans old school. If I had to guess. But I think there's enough books out there for them to keep playing that game. I don't think when you are coming up with a new edition or whatever, your goal should be hanging on to all of them. I think it should be about growing your business. That's what I honestly think. So yeah, what do you think? Am I off base? I'm like, do you think I have decent ideas or what? Because I would love to, again, whether it ever becomes Palladium's thing, I would love to make something like this, actually. Maybe I will. I'm not necessarily a game designer, but who knows if I ever did something like this. Maybe I become a game designer by default, I guess. I didn't talk about it. So skills. I want skills to be simplified. So, for example, I think rather than choosing every single specific skill, you choose basic skills. So, for example, rather than choosing chemistry, physics, botany, whatever, psychology, you would choose science. Now, science, though, is, again, very surface level. That's like high school level is where you're at. Now, if you want somebody who's a chemist in your game, they would take, a specific specialization. So it doesn't have to be spelled out as a chemist in the rules, and this is what a chemist can do, and You would just infer that, with basic science, these are kind of the things you can do. For anything beyond that, you need a specialization. And so specializations could be something players come up with on their own. It could be something that, now again, that's leaving a little bit up for some gaming the system. Or it could be something you get from something in the system, whether it's a class or maybe a background feature of some sort or a occupation. Now you've made occupations actually matter. And so maybe the occupation is, science is a skill we chose, and that's a prerequisite for this occupation. But now you can choose chemistry, like this guy's a chemist, or this person is, specializes in DNA splicing or, cloning, something very specific. And with that specific thing, when you're playing the game, if, something comes up in a science lab, oh yeah, would I know what this does or this is? If they're a science, thing, they're going to roll their science skill, which I think should be the same mechanic as their combat stuff. I don't think you should have percentiles and D20. That's two different systems rather than having just one concise system. So whether they want to stick with percentiles or they want to go with, D20s, D30s, or 2D12s, or whatever they want to do, I personally think it needs to be consolidated to one system rather than two. Now, with this, though, again, so you would roll your science skill for some things, but you would roll your chemistry skill for something that is, you're in a lab and need to discern this. You know what I mean? I'm good with percentage and D20 systems as well, but it's two systems as one rather than just one system. That's the thing. No modern game does that for a reason. If someone asks you, oh, well, what's the premise of the system? Oh, well, you do percentiles for skills and you do D20 for combat. That's two different systems in one. And you don't have to have two different systems for one. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things that is not necessarily good game design. And again, I'm not a game designer, but in conversations I've had with people over the years, there's a reason most game systems don't do that. And there's a reason Palladium still does it, because they still do things the way they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, for the most part. And that's because they catered to their current fan base rather than the growth of the game, I think, in some instances. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying the percentile system's bad or the D20 system's bad. They use. I don't mind either one how they use it in the game. I just think you should pick one and go with it. To me, the bigger aspect of what Palladium is the active defense. You know? I love D100 games like Star Frontiers, Drake and Stone Castle says. I love D100 as well. I love Call of Cthulhu and Pulp Cthulhu. I like Zweihander. That was a fun game to play. I played Warhammer Fantasy, one of the newer editions, about a year ago. And played only a one-shot of that, but I loved it. Percentile is very easy to pick up and play. Very easy. There's a lot of systems I really like. I love DMing D&D 5e because of the simplicity, but in a lot of aspects, it's too simplistic. And I don't want Palladium to be D&D 5e, but I would love to have something along those lines. I would love if Palladium went somewhere between Pathfinder 2nd Edition and D&D 5e, but rather than having a crap ton of actions, just like high-level D&D or current high-level Palladium, they found a way, and I've got ideas for how to do it, but they found a way to keep it so each person's turn is resolved quickly. Because in most level-up games, as you level up, it's not done quickly. Pathfinder 2nd Edition, with their way they've done their action economy, is very cool. I don't want Palladium to do that, by the way. I don't want it to be a 3-action system and you can spend 2 of your actions for this. I don't want that. But I do think having like I said earlier, maybe you could do 2 quick actions, or you could do a single quick action and a regular action, as well as your movement and reaction per round. I actually think that would be pretty cool. Indigo says, that's what Savage Drifts does. It can have a unified system as its Savage Worlds. I don't think every game needs to conform to modern design principles. I don't think every game has to either. But the point is there's a reason, even OSR games, right? They've realized things like THATCO wasn't intuitive and wasn't as quick as just target number, roll higher. There's a reason games are the way they are now. They evolve. They get better. Just like cars. A car 100 years ago is not as good as a car now. And, with all the technology in cars, some people argue that cars aren't as good now as they were 40 years ago, but they are in most aspects. They have better things about them. Better gas mileage. They're faster. They're safer. There's a lot of things. They have more gadgets. They do have some bullshit in them. But they overwhelmingly are better than they were. And I think the same thing can be said about most RPGs. Doesn't mean everyone's going to like it. Doesn't mean everyone's going to prefer it. I don't prefer Savage Rifts. I don't. I'm not a Savage Worlds fan when it comes down to it. I can play it and have fun, but I don't think it's a game system that will ever be at the top of my list of favorites. And I think the only reason I still really enjoy these games is more nostalgia than it is the actual system. There are things I love about it. Again, I love the active defense system. That's how I sell people on it when I talk to them. I, again, love the depth of character creation when it comes to abilities and stuff like that. I don't necessarily love the skill selection. It's pointless. Most of the skills you're never going to use, and because they're so specific, and you spend the longest amount of time picking your skills. Some people I've heard run games that somehow use all the skills, and that's cool. We'll always have this, no matter whatever happens with the new edition or, revised or whatever, you'll always have these old games that you can go back and play. You'll always have a Rift's Ultimate Edition if you like the system that way. I also think a document that expresses how to convert characters would also be nice. If people did want to stick with the old ones, only buy the new books for the setting stuff, then being able to adapt your character over isn't a bad thing. I actually think that's a good idea. And maybe, here's the other thing. Maybe while you have a new edition, they allow fans. This is something that Palladium has not really allowed over the years. They don't allow a lot of fan-made stuff to just be put out there. They don't allow you to do conversions of things. They don't allow you to do that stuff. A lot of fan sites have been shut down for years. And I don't think that should have ever happened, really. But I would think that if you did it, a new edition, you let fans take the new things you do and let them convert it to the old stuff. So maybe in Rifts you have new power armors or new vehicles that are introduced, because the whole idea with any new book in Palladium now, it sounds like from what they said in the thing, is that when they do new books or they do rehashes of old books, like Rifts South America, for example, or Rifts Africa or Rifts England or whatever they end up doing, Rifts Deep South, it's not going to take place at the original timeline. It's going to be about 8 years later. So you obviously are introducing new things like power armor or power creep. A lot of people I've played with over the years say, oh yeah, every new book, one-ups what they've done before. Well, when they do this, allow the fans to convert it for this. Just let them. Have a portion of your forums, assuming they would still have forums, allow a portion of your fan base to continue to play the old edition. They're going to buy the new books, create their own version of the new power armor, the AI power armor, and put it back there. Adapt it to that. Have a section on your Discord specifically for people to homebrew their own stuff. I think that would be great. Skills consolidation, definitely 101% on board with. Yeah, I think it'd be great. I also, again, I remember when I got into Pathfinder in 2013, at that time, the message forums over at Palladium were craving PDFs that they did not want to adapt to and start doing, because they were worried everyone was going to steal their IP and they would never sell books again. And the other thing that a lot of people were fighting for was, let's make Palladium D20. Let's make it 3.5 since of the open gaming license. I don't want them to just port it over to D20 either. I don't want it to be D&D 3.5 riffs. I don't want that. I don't want D&D 5e riffs because of the OGL. I don't want that. That's not awesome to me. That is D&D that's hacked to be this. I still want a unique system for the Palladium Megaverse. Let me read some of these comments now. Tim says, Star Frontiers. Now, there's a throwback. My copy is actually within reach. More expensive to maintain, LOL. Indigo says, skills consolidation, definitely 101% on board with. Well, I'm glad we agree on that. How would you do it, though? It sounds like you would want it to still be percentile for skills, and you would want it D20 for combat. Why would that be something you want to hang on to? I'm very curious about your thoughts on that. Tim says, you need to remember to include things that are aimed at player skills. Totally depends on the system. Sci-fi, for example, gives more opportunities to use skills. Oh, yeah. Well, so Palladium. So, Tim, I don't know how familiar you are with Palladium. Palladium has a megaversal system. In other words, it is adaptable to whatever you want. You have Palladium Fantasy, which obviously is high magic fantasy. Or mid magic, maybe more so, because it is based on old school D&D a little bit. Palladium Fantasy came out in the mid 80s, I believe. Basically around the time I was born. I'm only 36, so I was not around from the beginning of Palladium. I didn't get into it till 97. But then they have more modern, such as Heroes Unlimited, and After the Bomb, which is post-apocalyptic animals that big explosions and some tech. And then Rifts is post-apocalyptic, high-tech, end of the world, cataclysmic events. Dissonance says Kevin has kept the system the same, refused to change it for decades. Thankfully, he's about to stop strangling it and let it finally grow. It was time for sure. Yeah, again, he's not stepping away. He's going to still have just as much say. In fact, he's still the head honcho. He's still the decision maker. I fully expect Sean to help him, through this journey and see Palladium Books into the future. But, there's a lot of fans that feel that way. I can't even say that I haven't felt that way before. As I said just not too long ago, Palladium Books, the way the system is, I think I still enjoy it mostly because of nostalgia. Not because it's good game design. And that's not saying it's bad game design. It's just out of date. It's a 30-year-old system that we're still playing with. And every other one that's been out that long has made 4, 5, 6, 7 editions at this point. Call of Cthulhu's up to whatever. Hell, Warhammer's up to a bunch, whatever they're at. I think they're at 7th edition. D&D's up to 5th, but really isn't it like 7 or 8 editions of D&D now? If you count like how they did stuff in the 80s, now they had 2 editions running at the same time and stuff. Palladium in general has their original system and then kind of their revised edition and then Rift's Ultimate Edition, which is like the revised edition with a couple more tweaks. It's not even a whole new rule set. It's just changing a couple things. It's more like errata than anything with some other bigger things. But I don't know. I don't think I've ever played Palladium raw, rules as written. Tim says, I always saw the books, but was into D&D pretty heavy. Saw a lot of RPG changes and deaths, had friends that played Rifts. Rifts is good. There's some, again, stuff that's out of touch. There's things that are not PC by today's standards. I'm very curious to see if moving forward, when they redo things, if they're going to write things out of the game that maybe are considered crossing the line by today's standards. I'm very curious to see if they're going to change some of that. There's, videos about certain books they've done that people are outraged about how they did them. So I wonder if those are things that are going to get rewrites and complete changes over time, or if they're just going to ignore it and just not touch it. I don't know. Indigo says, I think combat and non-combat are 2 different things, and each requires a different kind of focus. Having 2 dice systems does a better job simulating how each requires a different kind of approach. So what about the fact that you will sometimes use skills in combat? I think it's less elegant. I think it can be clunky, especially for newer players, having 2 different systems rather than 1, personally. Yes, 5e is actually like 7e. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to see it consolidated to 1 system. I don't think anything's going to change my mind on that. I'm fine with it the way it is right now for now. But I've had problems trying to teach new people, especially since most of the people I try to teach have played other games, and even they are like, wait, I thought it was D20. Oh, now I'm rolling percentiles. Or people who are like, oh yeah, I've been rolling percentiles for all these skills, and now I got to roll D20. It's like, I've had it happen at my table. Again, it's a simple thing. It's not that big a deal. I think you would agree it's not that big a deal. I just think it'd be better to consolidate it. And I when it comes down to it, I actually think percentile is a little bit better than D20. The reason I wouldn't necessarily go percentile is because when I play percentile games, I don't feel like I'm playing a different system from one percentile game to another, really. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It is what it is. And, while you'll have things about it that make it unique, it feels like it's just the same system to me, usually, in play. Your character sheets are different. You have different abilities, you have different attributes, you have different things you can do, but you're rolling the same dice, and to me, it just feels samey. Whereas when I'm playing Palladium with percentile and D20s, I feel like it's a mashup of multiple systems rather than being it is its own thing because there's nothing else that's doing that. But it just feels like I'm playing D&D in combat, and now I'm playing percentiles and Call of Cthulhu in skills. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'd actually like to see Lords of Creation brought out again. Not much to mess with there when it comes to PC stuff. Very open game system. Gotcha. Yeah. The other thing, too, is, for example, people were asking about, is there going to be another attempt at a Palladium Books movie? Is there going to be an attempt at another Palladium Books video game, like on the N-Gage and things like that? If you're working with game designers for video games, having two different systems is not cool to program. Like I have a couple friends who work in that industry, and they've told me before having multiple systems is not fun. Now, as a player, you don't see it, but that's a whole nother level of programming over here for this compared to that, when you could use similar systems within the game with programming if you wanted to create a Palladium video game. So that would be interesting. Now, the other thing too is it sounds like there's been a ton of pilots made for TV shows and movies and things like that. We live in 2021. Like, they could go, like, if someone's put the work in, they could just have an indie developer create it and throw it up on their own channels. Could you imagine if they created their own TV show, with former talent? Because there's plenty of former writers and stuff who work, and this is something they didn't talk about. I don't think they thought about either. And maybe it's been talked about. I'm sure it's been talked about at some point. But for a long time, they were licensed with Jerry Bruckheimer Films, I believe, to do a Riffs movie. And they've had multiple people write scripts. Some were good, some weren't, according to Kevin. Kevin even said one of them sucked for like a TV show or something. I don't know. But we live in 2021 where there are talented people out there, and there are like software programs and skilled people that don't cost an arm and a leg anymore. People can make a lot of cool stuff, low budget now. You can get a computer that can handle special effects and all that stuff. So for just a couple $1,000s, you don't need tens of thousands of dollars for computers anymore. You don't need tens of thousands of dollars for cameras and, things like that anymore. It's 2021. So, it would still cost some money. Don't get me wrong. But if they had people that wanted to do it, they have the connections. They have directors in Hollywood they know. They have former writers from their company that now work in Hollywood. Like, they have these connections now. If those people wanted to make something, they could. They could create their own TV show. There have been pilot episodes and a full season of shows created for Riffs already. And so if they could crowdfund it, assuming Sean builds this up like I hope and expect, because again, he's organized, he's focused, and now that he's a partner, he's the creative director, I think over time we might see something. And they could put it out on their YouTube channel as a subscription, because YouTube has subscription options where you can subscribe to a YouTube channel and certain content can be hidden behind the subscription wall. They could also release it as a Blu-ray. They could also then, once they actually have a product, similar to how Critical Role has now their animated series coming out, once you have that product, you can then shop it to things like Hulu and Netflix and make more money on it. So, to me, again, this news of somebody with fresh ideas coming from the outside and knowing how a publishing company works, knowing how the gaming industry works, coming from what I would say is a bigger publisher, in 2021 by far. Savage Worlds puts out amazing products. Like these, are gorgeous books. They're well done. Just to give you an idea with the inside, like look at the maps. Look at just in general, it just looks like a nice book. It's a clean look. The art is good. This could be, again, really awesome moving forward. And as a fan, I'd love to see all of it. All of it. Indigo says, there are more than enough games that use single die unified mechanics. Palladium can stay the way it is. But if I could choose a different game system for Rifts, it would be Torg Eternity System. So I've heard somebody say that before. I've never played Torg, and so I'm going to ask, probably for the 80th time, how does that system work? Let me know in the chat. I just don't think doing something the same way you've always done it just because is the way to go. Because that's, I think, why you would do that. I don't think whether you keep that or not is going to make or break if fans stick with the game either. But I do think it's a very small barrier of entry for new people. Everyone knows beat target number. And there's a lot of different ways you can play with that. And whether it's roll high or roll low is completely different. You could do a roll low system, which has actually worked. I've seen people do that a lot with percentiles and IQ in the current system. If you don't actually have that skill, roll percentiles. If you don't have the skill, you could still do something like that. But yeah, I don't think I know I don't want to keep that aspect of the game moving forward. But hey, they're going to do what they want to do. One of the things that kept being brought up too is people who have reached out to license their, again, it was a 2-hour stream, so I'm not going to be able to remember everything verbatim or any of that. There's a lot of questions they glossed over, people asking about a new system. They did touch on it a little bit. Didn't say it was going to happen. They just said they're open to it. So that's the most exciting thing to me. I think the way to bring a lot of old fans back who have stepped away, I think that's one way to do it. Because I think people have moved on to other game systems. Game systems that they think do certain things better in their minds. But yeah, the other thing they touched on, though, when it came to things like writing books or comics or even movies or video games, is one of the examples was somebody wanted to push it 200 years in the future. And they said, well, why would you do that? That's basically not Rifts at all then. That's a whole nother thing. That's basically you doing whatever the hell you want over 200 years. Because 200 years is a long time. And especially when you're talking about high tech, because tech always advances quicker over time. So I don't think they're going to go with the things I have ideas for at all. Like, I'd be surprised if there was actual genuine interest in doing the things I'm interested in. I would be very surprised. If they did want to do that, I would love to work on it. I live only like an hour and a half away from Palladium HQ. Used to live like 25 minutes from it. Used to live in the Ann Arbor area. Now I'm in West Michigan. I don't care if they keep the same black and white style or if they go with something more like this artistically with color and, better paper. I do want all books to be hardcover though. I don't want this kind of hardcover though. I want them to come up with something better that I think holds up better. But again, this is one of my first books. It's curled edges, but the pages are yellow, and I don't know. It's fine. Again, I'm alright with it. It just looks dirty sometimes, and that's just because all the handling over the years. There's nothing you can do about it. But I think Kevin, as long as Kevin's there, I don't think they're gonna do anything crazy drastic. Like, you're gonna see the system will resemble what it has somehow. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be because of the active defense system. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep, like you said, the percentiles and the D20. I wouldn't be surprised. But to me, that doesn't matter. I would rather have one or the other. So this is Savage Worlds, but it's actually Savage Rifts. It's a newer version. This is the older version from like 5 years ago. Which I got to play, like I said, with Sean Patrick Fannin. And actually, I think Kevin, so he was at that Grand Con. I believe Kevin's first game that he witnessed of Savage Rifts in person was the game I was playing it. Sean Patrick Fannin was running it. I think I was playing a Glitter Boy. We were going down into like sewer system, and I blew a bunch of crap up. It was great. It could take a bit to really explain to her. I don't need a full-on thing, but what is the basic mechanic it uses? Is it a D20? Is it percentiles? Is it 2D10? Is it dice pool, D12s? For example, Modifius is a pretty in-depth thing. And here's the Star Trek book. Almost 400 pages. It's 2D20 roll under, your skills add to your attribute, and they increase your crit, but you roll under. So if you have 3 ranks in something like whatever skill, if you roll a 3 or lower on either of your dice, that's a crit, or two successes. Sorry, they're not considered crits. They're considered 2 successes rather than 1. And the person running the game decides the difficulty of like 1 to 5. So you could have needing 5 successes, and you can build out your dice pool. So it's 2d20, but dice pool up to 5d20. And Fallout, which is also made by them, same deal, same system. For the most, there's more. It's different. All of theirs are a little different from each other, but it is still the same deal. In relation, you'll have 2d20, add to the dice pool, spend things to increase the amount of dice you can roll. If you succeed by 1 or more, so if the difficulty's 2 successes and you roll 3 successes, you now get a 1 additional resource to that pool. The Modifius site is a rabbit hole. Dude, there's so many great things on Modifius. The Fallout games, though, do not do a good job of distinguishing themselves on their website. So you got to be careful not to get the older Fallout game. That one I've heard terrible things about. The new one's great. Exploding D20, rolling a nat 10 or 20. Explodes die. Final result compared to a chart for final modifier. I don't want charts. I like charts, but not if you have to use charts. I don't want a bunch of charts to have to use. But I like charts. If you have to use like 1 chart, that's fine. But using a bunch of charts, no. Final mod applied to skill rank. Do you like crunchier systems, Indigo? Do you like things that are more complex? Or do you prefer something simple? Like you had said earlier, they don't have to stick to, I think it was you who said you don't have to stick to modern game design. And I agree, they don't have to. They don't have to do anything. They can just stick with what they've been doing and release things on a regular schedule, clean up their books, and that would go a long way. Clean up the organization, reissue old, recreate the same system for this, but better organized, and that could also do well. Honestly. Uses 2 kinds of card decks. 1 deck determines initiative. Oh, no. That's one of the things I don't like about Savage Worlds. Look at it. So I've got playing cards. I've got the action deck cards. I've got bennies. I've also got dice. I don't want multiple gimmicks. I hate that. That's one of the things I don't like about Savage Worlds. Is having all of the different gimmicks. 1 or 2 is cool. But I don't want a bunch of different things. In fact, that's one of the things, even about Modifius, I'm not a huge fan of. You can play with tokens for your pool of resources. I think it's called like Stress in one game, Octon Cthulhu, I think. I think it's called Momentum in Star Trek. I think it's called something else in Fallout. Not a big fan of those different things, to be honest. It's a small chart on every character sheet. Oh, okay. Is it like Thaco? Because I hate Thaco. I like gimmicks. I just don't like a lot of them. If it's one or two things at most, I'm cool with it. Again, I just held up 3 different things for just Savage Worlds, and I don't like that. Not to mention, you have the wild die and then your regular die rolls. So really, it's 4 gimmicks. I don't like that. It's too many things. Too much. And I don't think I have ADHD. It's possible. My uncle has it. My grandmother had it. I do sometimes have a hard time when there's too many things of focusing. But I wonder too if people who do have like ADHD, and I don't know if someone in the chat does, let me know if having multiple things is harder or easier for you. Because I just don't know. I would assume it'd be harder. I like games to be quick, very quick. I would love a round, say you have 4 players and a game master. I would love a round of combat for 5 total people at the table to take no more than 7 or 8 minutes. Like I don't want my turn to take 1 minute. Like that's way too long. And that's from the time I literally am told, all right, it's your turn, you're up. Okay, I want to do this. Boom. No matter what, whether I'm a spellcaster, whether I'm a big mech, I don't care. I want it to be no more than 1 minute. And that includes the mechanics and the dice rolls, and that includes the narrative and the role play aspect of how I'm describing it. I don't want more than 1 minute per person. I want it to go quick. Whereas, and I love exploding dice for damage only. I don't want it for other things. Actually, I've thought about this too. So, again, I actually think Savage Worlds, in theory, is a cool game system. I really do. You get rid of some of those gimmicks, and you change a little bit with how, like with the attributes, for example. If you guys have never played Savage Worlds, you put at the start of the game, you buy levels and or you buy dice. So, for example, an attribute in Savage Worlds has a die associated with it. So, for example, I'm drawing a blank on what the actual attributes are. So let me just pull that real quick, just to make it easier real quick. So attributes, though, will be associated with the dice. So you have like a D4 for strength. And for brawn, I think is one of them. You're going to have something else. Shoot, it's not in the book. What? I thought it would be at the back like most games. Do I not have them right here? I must have them over on my shelf. Yeah, I don't have it right here. Anyways, you have different attributes. So if strength is, say, D4, you'll then have a skill that might be associated with strength. And that skill might be hand-to-hand fighting or brawl, I think it is, or fighting. So with that, you would then put a rank in it. And that might be, again, the first one, since you have a D4 over here, D4 there, that costs 1 point to put it into that skill. If you go beyond your attribute that's associated with it, it's going to cost 2 points every time you try to improve it. So at character creation, if you're trying to make fighting a D8, so you go D4, D6, D8, that's going to cost you 4 skill ranks, right? No, 5. The D4 is 1, the D6 is 2, so that's 3 total. And then the D8 would make it 5. So it would cost 5 skill ranks to get that up there with strength at a D4. I actually think getting rid of that, so you have 2 different deals there, just make, you could either make your attribute a mod, just a modifier, straight modifier, and add that to the skill. And I honestly kind of like how they did that aspect to it. But if your fighting's a D8 now, and you're fighting a monster, and you go to roll that, you also roll a D6 at the same time. So you have 2 numbers you have to keep track of. If they both explode, which in other words, max damage on both. 6, you roll a 6, boom. So now you get to roll that one again and add to the 6. The D8 explodes as well. You now roll another D8 with it. You start getting into, well, this one was this and this one was that. It's easy, but having 2 things that are exploding gets ridiculous, and sometimes you screw up the math, and it's just little things. Again, little things bother me, and that's the only thing I'd say on that. So I would love even Savage Worlds to be streamlined just a touch. Get rid of the gimmicks of the cards. I know why they did it, because of Deadlands. I kind of like the action deck. Being able to give out special cards. I understand the jokers, but why not just make it a die? Say it's a D20. Just keeping it easy right now. If it's a D20 and you roll crit, like max 20, that counts the same as a joker. You don't need a card to do it. And then it's not, it's cool. Everyone gets excited about a joker. They should, but you have almost the same chance, slightly lower than rolling a crit on a D20. Tim D says, I like THAC0, but it's best used only by the DM. It was meant to remove the language of the mechanics. Yeah, so I don't like THAC0. I don't mind old school games. I don't mind how lethal they are. I like some of the games that have done it where they've removed THAC0 and just made it just the straight rolls and roll above a number and not worried so much about, having a math to it. Armor class, whatever, minus that is, this. I like it better that way, even with OSR games. And like Old School Essentials, I think, didn't have THAC0, and I enjoyed playing that recently. In fact, I was invited to play that this Sunday, but it's at 6:30, so I probably won't play that. Indigo says, I have ADD and Asperger's. It's my Asperger's that loves systems and how they interact with each other. Usually single die games like Mutants and Masterminds are boring to me. That makes a lot of sense to me. I get that. And I can respect that. I don't mind that. I personally just don't like it. I feel like I don't think it's hard. Like, none of this stuff is hard. But when you start doing multiple systems inside of a system or multiple gimmicks with the system at the same time, it's overwhelming and it takes me away from the narrative. I'm then thinking mechanics as I play rather than system, story and role play. And that's what bothers me because I want to tell the story. I don't give a damn about the system ultimately. You know what I mean? Tim says, at least in the D&D system, don't know how AD&D explained it. Gotcha. Nate, WASD20. I love it, man. Thanks for joining. I can't wait till we play Descent into Avernus again. But yeah, so Palladium Books, I don't know if you heard, Nate. I know you're not necessarily a Palladium guy. They announced a partner to come in and possibly be the heir to the throne and take over Palladium when the current owner is done with it. And he comes from Savage Worlds. He's been working with Savage Rifts. He's worked for Games Workshop, all this other stuff. I think he complements Kevin great. Kevin is the current owner. Kevin, I think, is a very emotional, creative type and very passionate. But I think he overpromises and is overly optimistic sometimes. Whereas Sean might still have a lot of those qualities, but he seems more focused, more organized, understands how publishing companies and gaming companies should be run behind the scenes a little more, it seems. I've heard people say he's not as well up on the Rifts line. He's probably way beyond what I am. But I don't know. I hear you. Story matters too. My first RPGs were BattleTech, Star Wars D6, Champions 4E, and TMNT. Yeah, my first was Heroes Unlimited, Rifts, TMNT, and then AD&D before Pathfinder, then Palladium Fantasy, and then 5e. And then I've played a bunch of games in the last 6 years. Love them. And I've found, because that's the other thing. So my friend Bill Roll Stats, who's a big OSR fan, he loves old school games. His favorite D&D now is Old School Essentials. It was BECME or Rules Cyclopedia. It's funny, when we've talked multiple times over the years, he's always told me, Juce, you're a modern gamer. You like modern games. Like, that's what got you into it. And I'm like, no, dude, I was into RPGs before modern gaming. Like, I don't like the classification in general, because I don't think I can be pigeonholed that way. But I do think I favor modern design. But I like all games. In fact, here's the other thing. I think your group is way more important to having a great time than a mechanic or systems. I do think systems can stifle it a bit, but I think your gaming group is far more important. I've played some terrible games with great groups and had a blast. And I played great systems with groups that weren't, the best for me and had a shit time. So to me, all about the group, really, when it comes down to it. But part of finding a good group is being able to sell them on a game system. Because if the system is not appealing to them, they won't play it. And as somebody who was a Megaversal ambassador for a long time, as somebody who has, again, I brought a lot of people to Palladium. I've heard the gripes, over the years. I've been on the forums. I understand it, I really do. Tim says, I'll lose players if I throw in too many gimmicks. Battletech is the bomb. Old School Essentials sounds like the Holmes edition. Possibly. So I don't know all the differences between the old editions. I just don't. I definitely am cool with the older editions. One of the things I did not like about it is certain races are classes, just like the old D&D. Like, I think Dwarf is a class. And I think Elf is a class, and I think Gnome is a class. I don't like that. Yeah, I would rather just not have those and that be flavor rather than that be a class. Like, I'd rather play a fighter and say it's a dwarf. And there's nothing saying you couldn't do that. You just don't get the dwarf class abilities, right? But I would rather the race be just flavor, if anything. If you want a stripped down game where it's very, in my opinion, those games are more restrictive because, again, you can't be a dwarf wizard. You can't be this, that, I think OSE is BX. Yeah, maybe. It's possible. I don't remember. But yeah, again, I don't know anything. I don't know a lot about pre-AD&D. And AD&D was the first D&D game I ever played. First campaigns. So yeah, it was Heroes Unlimited, Rifts, and then AD&D, basically. I never played D&D 3.5 or 4e. The only thing that got me away from AD&D and Palladium and Pathfinder, Palladium Fantasy and Pathfinder, was D&D 5e. And I played that a lot, but I did try a lot of other systems. I've tried Numenera. We've played a lot of Call of Cthulhu, Pulp Cthulhu, now Octung Cthulhu, which Octung Cthulhu is the Modifius 2D20 system. And I like it. I didn't like it the first time I played it for half the session until it clicked, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is easy. Again, I like simpler systems. I don't want my rules getting in the way of roleplay and other cool stuff. But I love when a system can encourage roleplay. I love being able to build a character through mechanics. I do like that. I like character options. That's the thing I like about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I do like feats and things like that. Or at least having choices when I level up and making my character evolve and better at certain things. And maybe not even always better, just being able to do a new thing is cool to me. It keeps it fresh. Because one of the things I'll say too is a lot of the old games, the leveling is so slow. Which brings me to another point. I don't use XP anymore. Which, if you want XP in a game or not, cool. I think you should always have the option in the game to have XP or milestone. So, just put XP in there, and if people use it, great. If they don't, they don't. But I do not like playing a game for like 10 sessions before you level up. That is too slow for me. I personally like to level up every couple sessions, maybe 3, 4, 5 at the longest, but that's a long time. From my experiences before I started streaming games, I wouldn't play a game but once a month with people at best, sometimes once every 6 weeks or even 2 months. And so if you're only leveling once every 5 sessions, your character's the same build, the same options for 5, 6, 7 months. And to me, that's just too slow. So I love that, like, when D&D 5e was in the playtest, because I actually started playing other than AD&D, I started playing the D&D Next playtest at an Adventures League thing with a friend, and I started getting into it from there and giving feedback. I do love that they took the crowds, the fans' feedback for level progression and things like that. I really do like that they did that. Because while the first couple levels are too quick, when it comes to XP, I think, I like the quick aspect of it. Indigo says the first D&D I ever played was 3rd edition. Oh, interesting. OSE Advance is a simplified AD&D 1E. Oh, okay, I don't know. I didn't even know there was OSE Advance. Tim says BECMI added rules that allows for magic for the different races. There's actually about 40 playable races. Oh, wow. That's the microwave effect. What's the microwave effect? I don't know anything about that. Never heard that phrase before. But again, like I was saying earlier, as you level up in a game, I don't want turns to get to the point where it takes you 5 minutes to resolve it because you have 7 attacks to roll. If you want to build extra attacks into a class, still make it 1 roll to hit. Add damage dice. So rather than be 1d whatever damage type, make it 2d damage type. And so if you roll low on the dice, that just means you didn't hit every time. If you roll high on the damage dice, you hit multiple times. That fits my style more. I'm all about that too. Like just quicker combat, quicker resolution in general, so that you're spending less time with mechanics and more time with the story, with your group, role playing. And I don't think a lot of Palladium fans necessarily, the current batch, reflect my views. So, but yeah, I mean, so I've talked about this for an hour and 40 minutes. I'd love to talk about more. We can continue to talk about Palladium. I could end the stream if you guys want. Or if you guys have ideas and you want to bounce ideas off of me, if you have questions about some of the stuff that came up, I'm more than happy to try and answer what I think was said in the stream. I've been watching, I'm not very far into it, but I was watching on the Manufactured Myth and Ledger Domain channel on YouTube, Kevin's interview. I believe it was September 18th, so 3 days ago. I don't know what they were exactly talking about, to be honest, but I was listening to that. Because again, this news today, or not today, just the other day, excited me about Palladium again. And again, I want that to be a great game. I want the company to thrive. I think the setting is good. I think it can be great again by today's standards. And that's what I want. I want new fans. I want fresh blood coming to it, So, Indigo says that interview was great. My OSR knowledge is pretty low. Yeah, I'm the same way. I just don't know a lot about old D&D. I just don't. Could be my age, could be the fact I didn't grow up on a lot of different editions. I hate edition wars. Absolutely hate them. Because again, I think the group is way more important than editions and systems anyway. Tim says, feeling like something takes too long, although I believe in moving my players' characters up. Oh, like slow leveling? Yeah, I'm with you there. Sean, dude. So Sean is the new creative director. That's awesome that you joined us. So I've talked about a lot of stuff tonight. I don't know how long you've been around. I talked about like what I would love to see if you guys did change things and the type of game I would want if you guys decided to change the system. And if you guys change the system, I would love it if you guys let the community, when you do like new Rifts books, for example, let them convert new things to the old edition, so to keep the older fans happy. Here is if you guys are interested, you can go check that out. That was the actual interview. I think that Again, I think it was on the Palladium YouTube channel, and I believe it was also on the Twitch of the Pinnacle Entertainment Group channel. So, awesome. Sean, I would love to have you on sometime. I would not ask gotcha questions or anything like that. I would just love to spitball with you and learn about how you got into gaming and stuff like that. I know I can probably find it all out there. But I would love to build a relationship with you guys. I was telling, when we had like 12 people earlier, I was telling everyone how much Palladium's always meant to me, Savage Rifts. I'm not the biggest Savage Worlds fan. Yeah, Juice wants to bork it and make it 5e. No, I don't. Not at all. See, Sean, now you got to go back and watch it. I do want a simplified game. I do. And I was telling them, and I do want to repeat it since you're here. The thing to me that makes Palladium unique is the active defense system. I was telling Indigo likes the percentile skills and the D20 combat. I don't. I think it's clunky. And again, I'm somebody who grew up on this, and I think it's fine. But I would love to see something stripped down to one or the other. And not stripped down. I would like a decision made on where to go with that. Whether you did a single die mechanic for resolution or percentiles and all that. Awesome. Yeah, I'm not going to go back and repeat it then. But yeah, I went through my whole idea top to bottom for the system. So I'm a little bit of a fanboy on Palladium. I really am. I used to be known as a Palladium Books only channel. I played Palladium Books only for 14 years before I got into AD&D in 2010. Played AD&D and Palladium for like 4 more years after that. Got into, Pathfinder and all sorts of stuff. I said that earlier as well. But yeah, the thing I've always sold people on, over the years, and the way I've gotten a lot of other YouTubers into it, we used to stream a lot of games on the channel that you can always go back and watch. Heroes Unlimited, mostly for me. The thing I really sold people on this system with was the active defense. It was never the percentile skills and then the single die combat, So that's what I want to see if you guys do ever do that. So I know you guys said you were listening in the stream the other day, and I know you guys are. I've met Kevin once before in person at GrandCon in Grand Rapids. I live just outside of there. I'm about an hour and 20 minutes from you guys in Westland. Used to live near outside of Ann Arbor in Saline. So I'm from that side of the state originally. But I got all sorts of ideas, man. I know you said you don't need idea people. So again, I just want to see you guys succeed. That's all I want. And if there's anything I can ever do to grow Palladium, I'm there, So, but yeah, I'm going to show you guys. So once again, Riffs. This is my baby. This was like one of my first books. TMNT. This is one of my first books. Love it. And that's the other thing. It's got to be adaptable to it all, man. So, you guys have any other questions? I'd love to talk about it. Indigo and I do not agree. He likes crunchier games. I like simpler games. But yeah, no, I do not want D&D 3.5 riffs. When I was talking to Kevin a few years ago, he was listening to some people who wanted to Pathfinderize it. And I told Kevin, I said, I don't want Pathfinder to be riffs. I just don't. And I definitely don't want D&D any edition to be riffs either. So some of the coolest stuff is I like MDC. I like how, and I'm not familiar with the new Savage Riffs. I only backed the first Kickstarter that you guys had when Sean Patrick Fannin did it. I do like how the MDC was done with that. I do like how things were balanced a little more. Now, balance isn't important to me because, again, I grew up with Palladium Books. So I'm used to not having it, and that's completely fine for me. But I do think most fans prefer, and most gamers prefer balance for many reasons. And so I do like how in Savage Rifts things are far more balanced. You can have a glitter boy in the party, and while yes, it's still really great at blowing stuff up, you can have a vagabond next to it, and or a Mars character next to it, or whatever, and it's still effective. It's never completely neutralized necessarily. So I really do like that. And then I also think that something that's important is the armor damage reduction. I think that's important as well. It's one of those things that if you guys did go to a version of a D20 system or a dice pool system or whatever, I do think that is one thing that does set it apart from other systems like that. It keeps it different than like a D&D. It keeps it different from Pathfinder and stuff. Indigo says, hey, we both like Palladium games. Solidarity there. 100%. I hate when I see fans in the community fighting with each other. Absolutely hate it. I stopped going on the Palladium message forums a few years back regularly because of all the infighting, unfortunately. And I promoted Palladium hardcore probably up through 2016 or 17. I kind of got away from it, settled in with D&D 5e for a few years, and now I'm playing a variety of systems. And I like, there's plenty of room for more game systems. So, Sean Sessler, welcome, buddy. If you guys are new, please smash that subscribe button, give us a like. I'm really curious, and something I had said, Sean, that I think would be cool. And we're in 2021. I know you guys have a lot on your plate. I love the idea that things are going to be more focused, more, pulling in the reins a little bit of how things have been. I'm really excited about it. David Sims, Savage Rifts renewed my interest in the setting. David, thank you. David is old school. I'm so glad you're around, buddy. Thanks for joining tonight. It's been a while. Tim says, I'll play pretty much anything. Yeah, I'm with you, Tim. I love trying new games. I've probably played 20, 30, maybe under 30 systems, but around there, I would assume, over the years. Most of them in like the last 6 or 7. I probably own like 15 or 20 at the moment. But yeah, so I love the focus I think you're bringing to the team. I think you balance Kevin out a lot. Love a lot of what I saw in that stream the other day. So it's all right, Dave. If you want, I've been talking since about 7:30 about the system. Most of it about the system, but I did try to paraphrase things that I had seen in the other interview. I am very optimistic right now about the direction of Palladium, and it's all just based on optimism because they didn't announce anything really. Like, they said some stuff. The announcement was that they have a partner now for Kevin that balances him out, has focus and drive, knows how to run a publishing company, has tons of experience in the industry, and it's great. It's really great. But yeah. Indigo says, I'll play anything if the group is cool. A good group can make even a lesser game fun. Completely agree. But you still got to sell it to new people if you want them to try it. There has to be buy-in. Like, as much as I've loved Palladium, it took me a long time to be able to find people that would play it. My early gaming years, I could not sell it to people. I could not get people to play. I couldn't get buy-in. Early 2000s, all anybody wanted to play was D&D 3.5 in my circle of friends. I could not get anyone to play. It wasn't until internet, Google Hangouts in 2014, and me starting a Facebook group called the One Shot Group, and that led to me playing so many Palladium games. Before that, I had to go to the message forums in Palladium Books and run my games through chat rooms or AOL Instant Messenger chat rooms. So that's how I ran Palladium games for a long time after my initial groups fell apart. And so to me, that sticks with me. I don't want someone to get into a game and deal with that for years like I did. Most of my experiences with Palladium were creating characters and theory crafting. And honestly, they're great memories, And I think that's why I do love talking about mechanics and talking about game systems. Because again, I've theory crafted so many characters. Like I've got, when it comes to Palladium, especially Heroes Unlimited, I have characters that push the boundaries of the highest strength you can have at, I want to say like 120 or 130 strength. I've got characters who can run hundreds of miles per hour in the Palladium system that I've created. Some of them I've broken the rules with just to do it. Which, if you read Century Station, a lot of the NPCs in that book do not meet the character creation guidelines, and which is fine, But this game right here, this is what I give credit to when it comes to my channel and my love of tabletop RPGs. This right here. And, even before then, the very first book I think I owned, this one. This book. So I was young and I loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then this was given to me when I was 12, back in 97. But I also got this around the same time. Bought it at Ryder's Hobby in Ypsilanti, Michigan. So, yeah. Awesome book. I still use this book when I play Heroes Unlimited because I like the equipment section in this one more than the newer Heroes Unlimited. And I still need to get those hardcovers, man. Gosh, I've been meaning to do that for a couple years now. Get the blue hardcover. Indigo, hey, you have a good night too. I hope to do more Palladium stuff in the future. If you guys want to see specific videos about Palladium, I'm more than happy to do them. More, scripted and how-tos and, maybe even character builds if you want. I would love to do more Palladium stuff again. David says, I think I've owned realistically about 95% of the Palladium library up until at least 4 or 5 years ago. Oh, did you sell a bunch? Did you sell them just because they took up space and you didn't play them or what? I'm curious about that. Thanks for the conversation. Hey, Indigo, thank you. You definitely added and contributed tonight and kept things interesting. I loved the open discourse and, the cordial civil discussion. So, I think we played Rifts the most. Yeah, I think, have I played Rifts more than Heroes Unlimited? No, because of the chat rooms. I've played, unfortunately, the first game I played was supposed to be Heroes Unlimited. It ended up being Rifts. And we played Rifts for a little bit before the game fell apart because we all moved separate directions. We moved somewhere else in Saline. The guy who was running it, who was 26, he moved out to Jackson, Michigan. Another guy moved to Tecumseh. So our game fell apart, and then I didn't play an in-person game for years. I had a bunch of friends who played D&D 3.5, but it was a full group. So, I think we played Rifts the most, and a lot of their horror stuff. Oh, like Nightbane, formerly Nightspawn. I have that. I loved. I have Nightbane. I don't have it as Nightspawn. They have Dead Rain too, which is different than their core system. I think that's one of the only game. I don't think I own it anymore. Used to have it, but I never played it. So it was one of those things where I was like, I'm never gonna play it. I kind of traded it for something I was gonna play with somebody else, or I thought I would play. Lost books during moves, yes, or water damage. I had some books get wet. I had to throw them out before. That's one of the reasons I am mainly a PDF guy these days. Oh, I can't do PDFs. So I think companies should offer PDFs or some form of digital, but I am not a PDF guy. I can't sit there and read them. However, PDFs did get me into Palladium Fantasy. I bought the whole Palladium Fantasy line because I was at work and someone shared a file with me in Google Drive to look at, and it was Palladium Fantasy. And that led to me buying, it was just the core book and Northern Hinterlands like 7 years ago. And from then I was like, okay, yep, I'm getting into this. Because I would love the Northern Hinterlands book, I think. Is that the one when it was split into two? So that area in a later book became a single book. But before it was 2 books in the first edition Palladium Fantasy. And it was the 2 books that I had read the PDF for, and I was like, this is it. I got to get into this. And that's actually what led to me buying that whole line, which I don't have anymore. I don't have my core Palladium Fantasy book or some of the others, unfortunately, anymore. That's one of the reasons I am mainly... Oh, okay, I read that. Tim says, seriously, wouldn't mind seeing something about the basics. So I do have some. Let me... If you go into the search bar, and I'll do this and post the link. I believe if you type in Heroes Unlimited Basics, my stuff should be first. So for example, I have a 6-minute video about discussing skills and skill programs. I have a 20-minute video about why I love this game. And then there's the game I ran, only one. I never ran more than one episode. It was the Supers registration campaign from the Rifter. Character creation one. Nerdarchy, a game I played in with Nerdarchy on their channel. Or did they? Maybe it was on my channel and they just took it down and used it on theirs as well. I don't remember. Oh, okay. Here's another one. So, you know what? I got it pulled up. Let me share my screen. Just a second. You'll be able to see what I got on my screen. All right. So here's all the videos. So if you search Heroes Unlimited Basics, you get all these videos. Most of them are by me. That bluish background, those are my basics videos. So you can see those 2. I got 2 right there, discussing the combat stats, discussing the attributes. Ooh, what is that? You know what? I'm going to add that to my own watch later. Because again, I haven't made a new Heroes Unlimited video in a while. So I need to check that out. Hey, look, we're live right now with that one. 6 of you are watching. Roleplay Roulette, I'm good friends with those guys. Fox Winter from that channel. I hung out with him at GenCon a couple years ago. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, none of that is the business. So, again, all that good stuff. But yeah, I'll do basics. I wouldn't even mind talking about like theory crafting types of characters. For years, Palladium has kind of shot down sharing like builds of specific comic book characters and things like that. So I don't know if I'd want to do that because I don't want to step on anyone's toes and get a cease and desist letter or anything like that. But I will tell you, again, I said this at the beginning. Some of you weren't here. If you have this book, you can do a lot of characters. If you have all 3 Powers Unlimited books, you should be able to create pretty much every single comic book character ever. Except for the fact that some, for example, strength, does not ever get as high as, say, somebody like Superman or the Hulk. You have to take sometimes multiple superhero abilities to replicate one superhero ability from, certain comic book characters. So you might need regeneration and healing factor to recreate a famous character that is named the same as my favorite college, the University of Michigan's mascot, which isn't really a mascot, it's just their name. So again, you would need, multiple abilities to really replicate that. Plus you would need like super sense smell and things like that. But I actually don't think, I don't think Palladium is thinking about redoing Heroes Unlimited or Palladium Fantasy for Savage Rifts or Savage Worlds. They basically said as much on their streams that they don't want to create something for Savage Worlds that touches on what other products already do for Savage Worlds, like the Superheroes Companion or the Science Fiction Companion. Unless it's very specific and fills a niche somewhere and there's a demand for it, they're not going to recreate the wheel for that. Which is fine. You can go buy the Superheroes Companion for Savage Worlds and you can play, your superhero game if you like that. Again, I just want a new Palladium system that can get new people into it. Loved Palladium Fantasy. That did not get near enough props for a fantasy setting. I agree. So the one thing that bothered me is that some books never got a reprint, like for the newer rules. Island at the Edge of the World, I think, was one that was done for first edition Palladium Fantasy. Yin Sloth Jungles was another one that was for the older Palladium Fantasy. And maybe things have changed in like 5 or 6 years. I don't know. I do know, since I have gotten out of Palladium Fantasy, which I would love to get into it again, but since I've gotten out of it, they've released Garden of the Gods, I think, and Byzantium Empire. I think those are the only two. I remember when The Hobbit came out, Kevin went to see it in theaters. I think it was the first one. Maybe it was the second one. And it was around Christmas time, and he wrote one of his weekly updates about how he wanted to do something that felt like that for Palladium Fantasy. I remember that really well. Yes, Mega Heroes. But even Mega Heroes don't touch on Superman strength or anything like that. You get like, what is it? Here it is. You can have like an immortal and stuff like that. My wife played a Mega Hero when we did a solo game. I made her a character, or she made herself a character, I should say. We made it a Mega Hero because we were playing just her and I. I was DMing and she was playing. She made a female Thor kind of character before the comics made, female Thor. But she was immortal and big and strong and could fly and had a hammer, I believe. No, actually, she did not have a hammer. She had a pole arm of some sort, I believe. It was awesome. It was really fun. We only played a few sessions, like most of my early gaming experiences. And, well, most gaming experiences up until like 7 years ago were shorter games. All right, so Mega Powers. Supernatural physical. Okay, the following powers and modifications are made to characters who are Mega. All of them get these particular items. So every single one. So you're basically making a god. That's right. They all get supernatural physical strength, which is automatically have supernatural physical strength, whether that PS is 9 or 59. And the way supernatural strength works compared to regular strength, again, the numbers could be the same number. Like you can have a regular strength of 12, and you can have a supernatural strength of 10, but the supernatural is technically stronger. And so that was also one of those things that's like, ooh, that's confusing. And so those are things I hope eventually get cleaned up. Because I don't think you need a multiplier for these different tiers like that. Again, I think it muddies the water mechanically. I have not read the rules for a while. Yeah, I'm in the same boat, really. So other than the one shot I ran of Rifts back in, was that April or March this year for you and O'Neill Flynn, who was here earlier, and some other people who had never played Palladium, I don't think I've read the rules since then. I haven't sat down and read them. I've been so busy with other things. Creating content, running a variety of other games, playing a variety of games. Again, I love so much about this system, but there's so many things that I think need to be fixed. And I feel like I could make a really awesome system that keeps the core of Palladium together. And again, I've got an outline right here of what I would do with a lot of the stuff. I would actually possibly even implement some stuff from Savage Worlds. I love the edges and hindrances, for example. Love that. I also think it would be cool to make a sidekick as an option, or even bringing back the Mega Hero. Like if you did a superhero, like, again, Palladium system has to, in my mind, be something you can play for fantasy, heroes, or post-apocalyptic if you do a new system. And so if you're doing it, I would probably start with something that is has very low power stuff, but also has very high powered stuff. And so I would actually start with Heroes Unlimited to get that baseline. And then from there, I would do Rifts. And then I would do Fantasy on the lower tier. But I think understanding the extremes and starting with heroes, so you fully grasp the extremes, I think might be better. But again, I'm not a game designer. But that's just where I would start. And I honestly think with the right marketing, with the right people, back in the engine, I think superheroes could be, if done right, the most popular genre of RPG out there. I think it could be. I understand D&D 5e has a foothold. Dungeons and Dragons owns the tabletop RPG industry. But when you go to the movies, what movies dominate? Superheroes. What do all kids like? Superheroes. What is something married couples can a lot of times agree to go see? Superhero movies. Not everyone is into fantasy, unfortunately. But if you just follow tabletop RPGs, you would think fantasy is the most popular genre, And I honestly think you get the right marketing, you get the right people involved. I do think superheroes could be extremely popular. I think it's easier to get people to try a superhero game. If one of the things Sean said in his stream the other day is they want to bring structure to adventures. They want to bring structure and organization to the books. And so if you have, 2-page adventures in the book on how to run superheroes, for example, and here's, how you outline your session, or here's how you plant objectives and, get those across, and teach people not only how to play your game, but teach them how to run a good session. If you can teach people how to run a good session, and so then when those people are out running game sessions for new people, it almost guarantees they all know how to play the game. And I'm not saying you need a huge section in the book that's how to DM or anything like that, but I think, for example, one of the book, the number one book that got me to buy Pathfinder was the first edition Game Mastery Guide. I had that book before I had any other book by Pathfinder, first edition. And to me, that sold me on Pathfinder. Now, there are some good things in there about how to run a role-playing game and stuff like that. But to me, it was the tables. It was how quick I could improvise things for fantasy. But I do think if you have a good resource like that can teach people how to run a game, so that when they sit down and they read, 20 pages or 10 pages in a Dungeon Master or Game Master's guide, they walk away feeling like, oh, okay, I can do that. Then I think you've done something right. I think Numenera did it. I haven't read the Numenera book, but I've heard, and I've played it, but I haven't run it. I think it sounds like their Game Master stuff made it easier to run the game. I don't know if I want mechanics that necessarily make it easier. Like, I do like rolling dice as a DM or GM. So I don't want to remove something like that. But if the book is written in a way that makes it easier to understand how to run a game, I think that would help a lot. Victor says, I have not read the rules for a while. I don't like the different kinds of strength. Yeah, I'm with you, 100%. David Sum says sidekicks would be very cool. So sidekicks were published in one of the Rifters. I believe I have it. I do have it, actually, over on my shelf over there. And I think that sidekicks are, again, if you want to play low power campaign, I think it's awesome to have that option. And I think if you want to play a high power campaign, it's cool to have that option. Without messing with the levels, like being able to level up sidekicks might be kind of cool into full-fledged heroes. And maybe their sidekicks considered like level 0. I like leveling up in games in general. To me, it's new things. I know not everybody does. I know some people like, how Call of Cthulhu does level, or not leveling, but improving, where you roll your skills and they get up by use. Love it. All sorts of stuff like that. David, I read that. Victor says, what about upgrading minor to major powers? So again, I don't think you necessarily need to distinguish those. So one of the things I think is you could have powers. So I don't know how other superhero games have done it. But I've only played a few different ones and not many. I've never played Mutants and Masterminds, for example, and that's like the most popular. I'd love to get into trying that and many other games, though. But when it comes to powers, being able to set a tone up front. So say I'm going to run a superheroes game up front. Rather than say, no, you can only have minor or major powers. You say, look, we are doing a campaign tier 1. Tier 1 campaign. That's like lowest power levels possible. Think Spider-Man, Batman, or even maybe lesser than that. Maybe like more normal people like Punisher. Well, I guess Punisher would kind of be in line with that as well. But there's there's superheroes that really have like no powers in comic books and stuff. So that would be like tier 1. Tier 2 might be that next tier up. And all that would mean is if you choose a superpower, there's different tiers in the power maybe. That might be a really bad idea. So scratch what I'm saying. That's just me thinking off the top of my head. But again, I don't know about minor and major powers, to be honest. I'd have to really think about it some more. I haven't thought about it lately. Sean says, exactly, you get it. I think good adventures that leverage all of your rules are arguably more important than a GM's guide. Learn through doing. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think, rules can definitely, especially in an adventure, showing people how, especially intro adventures, showing people how to do the different aspects of your game are fantastic. And the structure of those adventures, just like writing a story, you've got the build up, the climax, all that. Doing it in a proper structure, again, goes really far. And so again, if somebody sitting down to run your game for the first time sees that and they're like, okay, I can do that, that is this, and then they can recreate what you put in this adventure with something else and change a bunch of stuff. Now they can recreate that formula, tweak it a little bit here and there to make it feel different. Way better. Way better. Tim says, once you get characters in any RPG up to certain levels of power, it can become more difficult to challenge the players. Correct. And that's, because of the way balance works in a lot of games and how they, again, sometimes I think games, especially D&D, it's not so much that they level you too fast, it's that they give you too much too fast. There's not a gradual progression. It's like if you look at a graph, it's like a line graph that goes, rather than a gradual thing. It's more steep. So, Punisher doesn't even have a permit. Punisher's sweet though. Like, let's be honest. I love the Punisher. I like a lot of gritty heroes though. I'm a big fan of Wolverine, Punisher, Batman. I love them. Love them. Wolverine's arguably my favorite superhero ever. I think GM guides are primarily used to convey the designer's vision of how their game should be played. Probably. There's a lot of ways to do it too. GM guides. I think they're valuable resources. But again, I don't think you necessarily need to do that either. For example, I do wish this had monsters in it. I don't believe it does. It's been a long time, but I wish this had monsters in it because then you could literally have one book at your table and run the game. And I know with Savage Worlds, again, they broke it down into 3 books, which is cool. Game Masters, Savage Foes and Monsters, and then the Tomorrow Legion. Again, it's cool how they did it, and I don't mind the smaller books. Like, I like box sets too, where you have multiple guides in there. But, for example, this game, Fallout by Modifius, all I need, and this is the new one, by the way, not the old one. All I need to play it is this. It's got monsters, it's got GMing, it's got players, all that. Star Trek, same deal. All you need to run this game is right here in this book. They got other books, other splat books, but it's got a GMing section. It's got like 8 different races. It's got ship combat. It's got everything. Now, once you start getting into some thick books, though, when it sits on your bookshelf, these pages, if it's not done by a really good binding company correctly, with, ladder stitching, I think it is, if it's glued in there, these pages are going to sink. They're going to fall down and be flush with the bottom. They're going to start pulling out of here, and you're going to have to buy a binder and 3-hole punch them. So again, you gotta You got to weigh the pros and cons of how big the book you want. And, again, these are things that Sean knows. Sean has been in the industry, and I'm excited about it. Really excited. I think Tim says, yes, that's changed. David says, I get what Sean is saying, but as someone who rarely uses modules, adventures as is, I mainly learn by a combo of GMing and being a player. So, if you're an experienced person, though, you've run tabletop RPGs, you don't need published adventures to run good games usually. You already understand how to, if, say you start the group separate, you know how to bring them together, even though you should, personal rant here, I think you should always start a group knowing each other somehow. I actually think having random tables to roll how each player knows each other. So here's the other thing I want to say. I love tables. I do not think tables should necessarily be used in play. As a GM, you have a lot of stuff on your plate and you're flipping and you got all sorts of stuff. But during character creation, I love tables. I use them all the time. I create my own on my Patreon for my patrons. I love them. I have random roll tables for how characters know each other that you do at session 0. If a character dies and you bring a new character in, you can always roll on that table for how they know the person next to them. And now there's automatically a tie for how they know each other. The things I've found with role playing is that when people have a tie in character to another one, maybe it's something simple like old drinking buddies. Maybe it's former same love interests, things like that. Maybe it's rival adventurer. That stuff almost immediately leads to great role play. And that's one of the things I love. And I highly encourage you guys to try that if you haven't before. Get a, Pathfinder, for example, their Ultimate Campaign book for first edition had one in there. You can find it online. Other people have posted it online. You can find it really easy. It's only like 10 different things. That's perfect. I absolutely love stuff like that. To me, the role play is amazing. And that's why you play. Tim says, seriously, I get stuck picking a favorite superhero. You know what? It's understandable. X-Men are my favorite right off the bat. Sean says the other advantage of having multiple books is that you can have more than one open at a time. True. But then you run table clearance as an issue. I'm lucky. I've got a big gaming room. But I've only had this space for a couple years. When we used to play, so I used to live in a mobile home. I've lived in an apartment. I had a small house at one point. Now I have a 2,000 square foot house, stuff like that. But when I was younger, didn't have that luxury. Sitting at a round table with 4 players, and you're the 5th person. Sometimes having a lot of books open is hard. But at the same time, having multiple books, so you can give a player a book because they don't have their own, and you can still have 1 or 2 books. That's helpful too. So there are pros and cons. And I don't think there's one way to skin a cat. Pardon the saying. I'm not for condoning skinning cats. Pioneer Gaming. Hey, buddy. Welcome, by the way. Tim D says, line the bookcase with heavy velvet. Yeah, I'm not worried about damaging the book. It's just that, again, here's an example. This Riffs book. This is an old book right here. The pages are not sitting down low. My binding in it is still great. This has been on my shelf for years. It's wonderful. I believe Modifius does a good job with their production quality as well. I'm not going to say any names, but I have books over there from companies I love. I have relationships with a lot of companies, so I don't want to say anything bad. But I have relationships with companies that I love, and I've told them my issue with some of their books has been that the glue, because it's glued in, pages fall to the bottom. You see it with, and I'm not sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, but the D&D 5e books, they're just glued in. They're not stitched in there. They fall apart, especially if you get a lot of use. When you're opening them, you hear them crack. It's just glued in there. So if a lot of wear and tear, those books are going to wear out, and that's just how it is. So I value that kind of attention to detail with books. I'm very particular about my books. Again, 3 of these books were my very first tabletop RPGs in the 90s, and I still have them in working condition. I prefer hardcovers. These are soft covered books right here. You know, I mean, yeah, they still work. This is the oldest book I have right here. This, I think, is one of the first ones. Let me pull out that sheet. Um, the fact that these stand the test of time. So this one is an 11th printing, July 1990. I don't know when it was actually printed, if that was actually when it was printed, or if that's just the print run. I don't know how that works. But, for the fact that it has had water damage on the bottom here, it's in good shape. But I'm very particular about who I let handle my books and how. And I know not everybody's like that. So, And I had these books as a 12-year-old in 97. So, yeah. And that water damage was before me. Sean says, so who has been running Heroes Unlimited on Roll20? How do you deal with the movement being so generous? I've actually got ideas for how movement could be done. So I think, and I said this earlier, I actually think Palladium, if they did a new system, should be 10 attributes for various reasons. But I think a speed attribute would be great. And you can roll for it, whether you do, if you want to do things the old way of 3d6, you could. If you want to come up with something different, you could as well. But I actually think you should only be able to move 20 feet per round standard, personally. One, you're using weapons that allow you to do things at range. The ranges need to be fixed for game purposes. I know, again, Palladium is stuck to realistic mechanics, or tried to. And while realistic is good, and for certain people, I think they prefer it more realistic. And I used to like Palladium because I thought it tried to emulate reality more than a game. I think making it for a game rather than realism is better now. But yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. Sean says, David, I totally get you. Some things work better for different people. We all have different learning and gaming styles, 100%. And I am definitely more of a rules light style, more narrative, story driven, character driven personally. And that's why ultimately, if the rules are just better or good or, workable, I can have a great time with a good group. So, ultimately it doesn't matter if I love the products. So, and it doesn't have to be because the system is great. Not that, again, and I like Palladium's system. I really do. I love the active defense. Tim says, tables are great for prep. See, yes, you get me. Prep, out of game stuff, I love tables. At the table, I don't like having a lot of paper out. I do like mini play. I love miniatures. And so Palladium, while I've used miniatures for Palladium's core rules, it's more for placement, because I don't like debates about, oh, well, I thought I was over here or there. I didn't realize I was so close, or I didn't realize I was, obstructed by this, or they were, had cover. I don't like all of that, gymnastics. So I like miniatures for that. And so I think having miniature rules for something like Palladium and better representing it for a game, not necessarily realism, would be great. Because that's so speaking of 5e, I don't like some of the spells that hit 300 feet away, like Eldritch Blast, for example. I think the spell's great. I like that you have a couple things that have long distance. But who has a table that you can do that with miniatures, or a virtual tabletop? To have a map big enough for that, you're not going to be able to see a lot of the stuff. You're going to have to zoom out, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's a lot of finicky stuff. I don't like things having that kind of range. But again, I'm worried about the game, not realism for me. But I like all games. I really do have a lot of fun with a variety of systems. David Sem says, for sure, Sean, yup. O'Neill Flynn, so the one I was telling you guys about earlier, who I ran riffs for recently. Love the idea of Palladium, but yes, it seems overwhelming of a system. So yes, something for new people to understand it is great. Yeah, no, I agree, man. And like we were saying, we'll play again. If I get something working out of what I've been writing the last few days, I will definitely show you, Flynn, and we can work on something. Maybe a little trial run of it. Tim D, original X-Men were excellent. Sold my #1 copy years ago. Oh, well. Oh, I loved X-Men as a kid. The animated series? Yeah. Loved it. And it holds up. Like, I still love those cartoons. It's on Disney Plus if you guys are curious. When Disney Plus first came out, you couldn't watch it in order. They were just on the Disney Plus. And so when you go to watch it, you had to like find the episode. I hated it. I think they fixed it since then. But I've shown my kids and they actually got into it too. Sean Sessler. O'Neill, I found Dead Rain was a great introduction to Palladium. Interesting. I've never played Dead Rain. I had the core book for a while, but couldn't find people to play it. At the time, everyone was talking about All Flesh Must Be Eaten. This was probably 2011 or 12, I think. But everyone was talking about All Flesh Must Be Eaten. And yeah, so I could never get anyone to play it. So I ended up trading it for something else. I just don't remember what. Tim says needs the stitching. Yep. Yeah, I agree. David says my 5e books had pages fall out. Never had that happen before. Yeah, it's because of how they're not stitched. They're just glued. It's a small detail that most people don't notice buying until their books fall apart. O'Neill says, man, I can't type tonight. I'll have to check out Dead Rain. So it's not your typical zombie game. So it's cool. Like, don't get me wrong. But I believe zombies can see your life essence, right? If I remember right. So they can see, like, almost like you radiate a glow rather than they smell you or other things. It's pretty interesting. And I would definitely play it if people wanted to play it on my channel. I will stream it. I'll play it off stream, whatever. Trying to find time off stream is hard, though. I'm always trying to fill my streaming schedule. Which, by the way, if anyone out there is interested in getting into streaming, I am looking for a Twitch partner. And I am looking for a blog partner because I want to do more with my blog. I also would like to have more streams on Twitch that either I'm playing or not involved in. Not necessarily looking for an employee. I'm looking for a partner. So if you want some stake in it, I'm thinking, and it would be very fair. So if you guys are interested, let me know. Best way is over on my Discord. Send me a message and we can work it out. O'Neill says, man, I can't type tonight. I'll have to check out Dead Rain. I read that. Tim says, David, they were replacing those. Yeah, if you have a book that fell apart and you reach out to Wizards customer service, they will send you a new book. They don't expect you to send the old one back or anything like that. So you'll have a table copy, just three ring binder and some hole punches, and you got a table copy that you can be rough with. My monster manual is signed by Ed Greenwood. He signed where the red dragon is in the front, and my book is starting to get a little rough, so I need to buy a new one. If I ever buy a new one, I'll probably just take that page out and frame it. I also have the starter set signed by him and some other people, so it's kind of cool. Sean says, hard to fit on a virtual tabletop, though. True. David says, yeah, Tim, I know, but it just made a bad impression on me at the time. Oh, you know what, though? That makes sense. I would be furious if my books fell apart. Furious. Nathan says, solid. Nathan, welcome, buddy. Tim D says, yes, David, I agree. Nathan says, weirdly arranged. Tim D, no Juice, the comic book. I think it was 63 or 64. Oh, I don't know what I missed. I missed something. Sorry, my bad. Sean says, playing a survivor in Dead Rain is way more straightforward than Ninjas and Super Spies, Heroes Unlimited, and Nightbane. Yes, that is true. It had some creative types of characters you could play in it, like cultists, I think, or like bikers or something, from what I remember. There's also some stuff in the Rifter as well. Which, by the way, I thought it was kind of cool that they might bring back the Rifter as an annual. That was something they talked about during the stream. It's not being promised or guaranteed, I think, but I think that's cool. And it allows people to showcase their talent without Palladium committing to hiring them, which I think is very smart. So, awesome. Just easier for new players. Yeah. Pioneer Gaming, hit me up. I have 3K Twitch followers. Okay. So I don't have that many. I only have like 200. So I don't even know if it would be beneficial for you to partner with me in the way I'm thinking. But yeah, we could definitely talk about it. Here's what I'll say. Message me on Discord, Pioneer Gaming. The link should be down in the description here. And we can definitely talk about what I'm thinking and see if it aligns with you and see if it's a win-win. Nathan says, haven't played it, but sounds cool. Okay. Yeah, no, you'll like it. Nathan, you're a Palladium guy, aren't you? I think we've talked about this before. I think that's how you discovered my channel originally, right? Or am I wrong? I could be reading it wrong. Sean says, keep it simple, stupid for new players. You have so little time to make an impression. Completely agree. For all games. I do think it needs a low barrier of entry. I do. And, as I think in general, RPGs have always been competing with other forms of entertainment, And I know some people view it as a lazy excuse for why people don't play tabletop RPGs as much as board games or video games. But when it comes down to it, when you sit down for the first time to play a tabletop RPG, you've got, let's just look at this. You have a book like this. Now, that's a lot. So this is also why I think content creators are so important, because I would rather learn a system by listening to a couple videos on how the core mechanics work and just jump in and use the book for reference, read it as I want. For a long time, there were games I wouldn't even try if I didn't play it first as a player, because I was worried I was going to mess it up or not play it correctly, and then everyone was going to hate the game and not want to play it again. So I got in my own way, and I know a lot of people do. And so a book like this, which is completely fine, books should be bigger, right? They need to have a lower barrier of entry. All game systems do. And so I think even starting up front with the basics of how the game works, even putting something like it on the back with just a quick little blurb of how the system works, like, hey, this is for example, this is a D20 combat resolution mechanic with percentile skills resolution mechanic, and having things maybe even on here that say like character creation 30 to 45 minutes or age recommendations, content warnings for age, stuff that makes you pick it up, realize who it's intended for right off the bat. I think that's a good way to do it. If I could pick up this book, a brand new book, pick it up and say, okay, and I don't think game companies are going to do any of what I'm saying, but if I could pick up this book right away and say, oh, okay, it's 2D20, maybe even on the cover you put like a big logo that says 2D20 or single D20 and percentile or, whatever, then you put that on there and someone's going to go, oh, okay. And if it's a unique mechanic, like variable dice mechanic resolution system, which would be my version of, how I would do Savage Worlds. I'd get rid of a lot of the gimmicks associated with it, like the deck of cards, and I would just use dice and bennies with exploding dice, and I would get rid of the wild die. To me, then and the way I would actually do resolution, for almost everything is, again, you have a variable dice mechanic. You might roll a D4 for your fighting because that's what your skill is. You might roll a D6 for your language skill or, whatever. Your mechanics or your vehicle driving might be a D10. So again, variable die resolution is probably what I would call that. And I'd slap that on there. So again, someone sees the book and they're like, what does that mean? Rather than, oh, that's cool art, I want to buy it. You're already going to have the art. Having something like that on there that's like, oh, I've never heard of that. What is that? To me is interesting. Rather than a lot of times when I see people talk about a new game system, it's got the name, which kind of gives you the setting feel. It's got the art, which again gives you sort of the setting. Which again, I do. This is so iconic to me. Love this. But I think having that on there would be interesting, because then I'm like, oh, okay, I like D20 systems. That's a D20 system. I like percentile systems. Those are so easy. That's a percentile system. Oh, that's a dice pool system. I love dice pool systems, or the opposite. Someone doesn't waste their time, if it's not the type of game they like. Maybe they know they hate it, So I just think stuff like that helps too. But that's why I don't think that'll ever happen to be like as a regular thing. And so I think, again, that's where content creators are important. Making shorter videos with, an overview is really good. David, thank you so much for joining. I've missed you, buddy. It's been a long time, and don't be a stranger. If you ever have ideas, David, I value your opinion very much. And so if you ever want a certain type of video or series or you have ideas, please bounce them off of me, okay? And I'll definitely try and make it work. Nathan says, I freaking love riffs. That's what I thought. I was 99% sure. And I just sometimes, again, I mix people up all the time on Discord with their real names over here and different names over here. It just throws me off sometimes. Nathan says, I'm on the same page with Savage Worlds. I think we've talked about this before. Probably. I've talked about it in videos. I, in theory, loved Savage Worlds. That's why I backed, the original Savage Riffs at the highest level. I got all sorts of stuff for it. I bought Superheroes Companion. I bought Sci-Fi Companion. I've got the Fantasy Companion. I've got the Travelers or Adventures Savage Worlds book. All of it. I think it was like $300 or $400 in on the first Kickstarter. And again, I just think I'd said earlier, I don't like too many things going on when it comes to a game system for me. It's distracting to me, and I don't think about the role play or describing what I'm doing when there's multiple mechanics I have to keep track of at the same time. Like exploding dice of two sets, the wild die and the regular. Like, to me, that distracts me. But in theory, I love it. Like, Savage Worlds is great in theory. It just doesn't work how it's always marketed for me. I don't think it's quick and fast. I've never had that experience at the table. And I've played in multiple games run by Sean Patrick Fannin, played in games run by my good friend Brett, who loves Savage Worlds and has all sorts of different Savage World settings. And I played with him for a while. I played Shinetar with him. I played Supers once. We did something else too. I believe we've done Savage Riffs, all that stuff. So I don't know. I feel like I've tried a lot with Savage Worlds because I wanted to love it, because it fixes a lot of the issues I have with this. It really does. So, Tim says war games do that. Oh, they post like they're on the cover. They kind of market it with like the core mechanic. I think it's great. Again, you're going to spend hours trying to figure this out for the first time. Any game, you're going to sit there and go, oh, how do I play this? Now, somebody who's experienced, who understands how tabletop RPGs goes, and has tried a bunch of systems, to sit down, look for the core mechanics, to look for certain things in the system to make it play, at least for trying the system. To look at how character creation is done, to look at the core resolution mechanic, to look at, how healing works, how to regain your hit points or how to regain spells, how to look up how travel works or exhaustion or just core things to the game. How to do that over time. When you're new to a system, you don't have those fresh eyes. So I used to do documentation for an electronic contract manufacturer out of Saline called Saline Electronics. We used to make work instructions for the production floor. That was like my primary job. I also was a trainer there. And one of the things we had to do when we made our work instructions for the production floor is write the rules, write the how to build circuit boards or mechanical assemblies or whatever. And we worked with a variety of stuff. We had military, we had medical devices, everything, right? We ran the gamut. When we wrote instructions for our production floor, we had to dumb it down so that you could look at a page or a step and just know right away. And I want to liken it to like trying to write IKEA instructions. There's so many like furnitures and things that you build out there that, again, is not dumbed down enough for people who don't know how to use certain tools and things like that. Like I'll read it and I'll be like, man, that's not how I would have worded that all the time. And I think that's important with an RPG. I think an introduction being able to feature those important things that us experienced gamers know for a new person, because the new person is going to pick the book up and think you read it cover to cover, right? And so I think in the introduction, you can introduce, a lot of things. You can introduce the core mechanics, which a lot do. Most games, I think, do that. Introduce the setting if there is one. Introduce, the how to navigate the book. Things like that. I think that's important. I also think having your content, a game company should have its own social media. Should have today's day and age. I feel like they should have TikTok. They should have Twitter. I know some people think those things are toxic, but I think you need those. I think you need YouTube. I think you should have a blog. I think they should have all that. And I think it's a great opportunity to teach people your system, as well as having quick start guides. I don't know if Palladium's released anything new. I know that for a while there were like cheat sheets and crib sheets. People would hide those as DM screen inserts for a long time. But those told you how to play the system. And I used to make crib sheets for my players at my table so I could just say, here's how to play. In fact, you know what? I'm going to show you guys one of my crib sheets for Rifts. Let me pull this out. I think crib sheets are invaluable. And I've seen gaming companies starting to put them with their DM screens over the last 8 years. And maybe they have always done it. I don't know. But where would it be? Rift's Light one shot. I think I have it in the end of every character. Okay. So I made pre-gen characters, and in my and you know this, O'Neill Flynn, you played in the game. Let's switch this up to the correct page. Boom. OneDrive. That's not it. Not Creative Cloud. No. Oh, here it is. Glitter Boy Doc. So I used the Savage Rifts art because I really like Savage Rifts art. But I made a little cheat sheet document to give everybody an idea in this game of how to play Rifts. Now, I run things homebrew, but I made this for everybody at my table in that one shot back in the day. And I put it all in a folder, and I said, here you go, this is your character. So for this one, it is about the tradition of helping people who need it and making a difference. And so this front page for me was kind of a blurb of what the class is, basically. And then the pre-gen stats, wrote it up like that into a little nice document. And because, again, Palladium is a crunchy game, got the different places if you hit it, and different actions and stuff like that all right here of the Glitter Boy. And then down here, again, you got the armor, right? Urban armor and things like that. You got your skills. Now, these skills are not in the core books this way. These are just what I chose to do for something quick, simple, and easy to understand for new players. And I just did that and ran with it. And they're a little bit higher because, again, I wanted people to be able to do stuff regularly because it's a one-shot and I didn't want them failing a lot. Equipment, vehicles, yada, yada, yada. And then the last page is my crib sheet. I explained what MDC is, SDC, hit points, and then dead. So you go through your MDC before you go to SDC, like the tier of it, MDC is something, blah, blah, blah. This is the gist of how to play Palladium right here in one page. It's not as in-depth as it should be if you really want to play the system fully. However, it has some of the rules. It also has some homebrewing a little bit in here. But shooting blind, -10 to hit, doesn't include full cover, shooting wild, yada, yada, yada. This thing was invaluable. I was able to have players that could see it. Oh, you know what I just noticed? This is bothering me. I gotta fix that. You can see above my green screen over here. There you go. Got rid of it. Sorry. Oh, that was ugly. Sorry about my production values, guys. But with this, you could see how to play the game. It helped everybody at the table. We ran a smoother game. People could look stuff up as they were playing. And again, one page, boom. That was all they needed to play. So it was great. Nathan says, great gameplay. Get rid of the overbearing card mechanism. I understand where they got it from, though. Deadlands. Yes. And Deadlands is, yeah, I agree. I said that earlier, too, tonight, when I was talking about Savage Worlds. And in that system, it works great. Yeah, it makes sense. And again, everybody loves getting a Joker. The Joker in the deck of cards is awesome. But you could recreate the same mechanic with a nat 20 or, 2 d20s, and if you get 2 20s. There's a lot of different ways to recreate that. And still get people excited. Tim D, been there, Juice. Nathan says, it's designed for that, though. Yep. Nathan says, learning is the hardest part, getting used to the system. Yes. And in my opinion, when you sit down to play a game, within half the session, you should have a general understanding of how the system is played. And you should start to get comfortable with some aspects. If the first session, second session are up and you are lost, there's a problem. If you like crunchy systems, I'm not trashing crunchy systems. I do like crunchy systems. I like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, especially as a player. I still love my riffs. I still love all that stuff. Crunchy's not bad. Different strokes for different folks. O'Neill Flynn, never used work instructions, hands-on training for me. Oh, you're one of those people who messes things up, though, or misses screws, I bet. You were the person that was our nightmare on the production floor. So we had someone who was related to the owner and another high up in the company who I loved him to death. Used to go out drinking with him and stuff. He was our mechanical assembly manager, and he would sometimes just ignore the work instructions and do what he thought. And a lot of times it would bite him in the butt. I would sometimes, as the person making work instructions, work with our engineers. So there were things that I would hear and find out that we had to do a certain way so we didn't break something or stress something, or, there were an order of operations to certain things. And so sometimes if you do things without looking at the work instructions, depending on the complexity of the build, you will break it or ruin it. And then you have to throw out, a $20,000 BGA, for example, because you crushed it. So if you don't know what that is, it's a ball grid array on a circuit board. They make some pretty damn expensive ones out there. Nathan says, I love learning on the spot. It's hard for me to learn something from reading or hearing about it. No, I agree. And so that was the thing too. We had to do a few things that I didn't agree with. But sometimes management outranks you. They want things a certain way. When I worked there, they made us remove punctuation. I don't know why. We also were told to make every letter capitalized because you can read it better if it's all caps rather than upper and lowercase. To me, that's harder to read. You miss context then. Whereas punctuation and those things add context a little bit. Obviously, reading things is harder, but again, you're talking about instructions. You also had to put numbers and step-by-steps for that, because if you didn't have a number, because sometimes things were interchangeable, but if you didn't have a number, then people thought they could do it in whatever order they wanted, apparently. So all this stuff happened while I worked there. I worked there for 10 years. So yeah. Nathan says, I love the fact that you have a cheat sheet. Always. I made a cheat sheet for D&D 5e when it first came out because players didn't understand certain things. People asking if they can do something as a bonus action that they couldn't, or a reaction that they couldn't. So yeah, I make cheat sheets for a lot of games, especially if I'm very passionate about that system and I want people to understand quickly. I think it's important. Nathan, yeah, there's a lot of role players who are. Oh, yeah. Tim says, time and space just warped. O'Neill Flynn, good night. 4 a.m. comes early. Hey, thank you for stopping in. I'm a perfectionist. I don't get any complaints on my job. I tend to improve the work instructions. You know what? And that happened to me. Plenty of times, production workers would tell me, hey, this is better. This is more efficient. Can we add this? Hey, can we add a picture of it? Whatever. And yes, it was a team effort every time. So yeah, no, it wasn't like I was the end all know-all, that's for sure. But I was good at my job. Nathan says it happens, and some people are worse about it than others. True. Very true. Yeah, O'Neill Flynn's great. He played the actual glitter boy in my game that we did. I think the being able as a player to understand your options in combat, out of combat, is important, and understanding how it works. But you only need one person at your table who truly understands it for the first couple sessions. Then it starts to click. The more complex a system is, the longer it takes, the harder it is, the more mistakes that are made. And that's okay. It does not matter if you make mistakes in an RPG. But the smoother it runs, typically the better, because the more mistakes there are, that will ruin the experience for some people. And I've experienced it with Palladium, and that's unfortunate because I know people who like complex games and the layout turned them off and stuff like that. And these are all things that I think are going to improve moving forward. I'm really excited about it. Tim says, I've always been stuck in quality control. UL certs and stuff, owners are so frustrating. They can be, especially when they know nothing about the product other than they were a business major and they push it through. It's sometimes tough. I was a business major, though. So, everyone's got their own life experiences, their own perspective on how things need to be done, why they need to be done. And working as a team requires different visions, I think. And it's hard. It's very hard. But some people can do it. Some people, yeah. I think I'm pretty good at it. I think I'm good at bridging gaps usually. Because I try to see the other side. I know not everybody tries to see, what shipping has to worry about over there, what, mechanical assembly worries about, what, the engineers are worried about, and, customer service. And, I think I'm good at bridging the gap. Makes sense. Some people are just better at finding flaws. Yeah. Yep. Oh, I agree. Completely agree. Completely agree. Whew. Man, I haven't talked this much in a long time. I can feel it in my throat. It doesn't help that it's been raining and I get allergies. You know what would be really cool? Since tonight is all about Palladium. This is my celebration of Palladium tonight. It would be really cool. Here I'm throwing an idea out. By the way, guys, I'm going to say this now. Ideas are shit without execution. Just going to say that. But a really cool idea would be if there was a mass coalition Halloween costume production line. Even people who aren't into riffs, I think would see it and be like, that is cool. I want that shit. Hell, a glitter boy costume would be cool. Stilts and everything. Whew. Hell yeah. Nathan says, that's awesome. Always wanted to play a glitter boy. Our GM wouldn't. Wait, what? Why would you? Oh, no. Okay, Nathan, you got to tell me about this. So, okay. While you're doing that, I will look for the folder of my riffs characters. Go to Google Drive. Bloop. Oh, Palladium Books Light is what I called it because it was homebrewed. And all right, so I had for my one shot, I had a canine mercenary, an elemental fusionist, a glitter boy, a hired gun, a juicer, and a technomancer. Or I'm sorry, a techno wizard. And you know what? Each one, I think, got to do cool stuff in my one shot. So yeah. I still can't believe that. Why would your GM not allow that? Nathan says everyone has their strengths. Yes, that is true. And people who can identify their flaws and know of it, that self-awareness is huge. Absolutely huge. Tim says, if it costs more, forget it. Yeah, cost sometimes can be a real issue for certain business owners, but you got to be able to show them why it's important. So when I worked for that company, my last couple years, I left the company to move to this side of the state originally. For my wife's job back in 2013, I think. When we got married, she got a job offer to come over here. We moved. We moved back to that side of the state because I got a call one day. I was working in sales, car sales and real estate. I got a call from a former coworker asking me if I'd ever be interested in moving back over there and being the manager because my former boss wasn't there anymore. So I weighed the pros and cons, and we decided to do it. Moved back. My wife was able to keep her job, work remotely. Back, 2013, 2000. Actually, it was 2014 at that point. No. It was like 2015. And so we went back, and I was the manager for 2 years. In that time, I originally had 4 people under me. They wanted to expand the team to 7 because they thought the workload was too much. One of the first things I did was I updated all of our templates. I slowly started working on software integration to reduce our workload, so to automate things. And while we did not go with the company I wanted, we went with the company that my new boss all of a sudden, 4 months in, they changed my boss. My new boss's son worked at, which was not the company to go with. There were issues throughout it because I would send them step by step. Like I color coded things. I made it so like a 10-year-old could understand the steps, and they could not program it how it needed to be done, which was crap because I had a friend who did software programming who was never in the bid at all. And he told me, no, that's easy to how to do that. And then I had also talked to the other company originally about it. And they said, yes, that's very easy. This is how we do it. The other company was more expensive. So like you said, of course, that was why my boss said we wouldn't go with them. But that other company who was more expensive had a great portfolio of working for hospitals. The software that they had created was very complex for other companies that they needed to. They also had, really simple stuff, but they had an amazing presentation. The only reason we went with the one is because of the vice president, my boss, his son working for that 5-person team, rather than the 12-person team of the bigger company, or at least the 12 people they were going to allot for our project. That should have only taken a couple weeks, apparently. So when we worked with that, I was able to cut down my workload about 75%. We then decided to upgrade our software for creating work instructions so that it could do a lot of... So I knew what the old software was capable of, but because it was out of date, it didn't make sense to try and bring in the people from the company to automate certain things about that. My employees had no idea how to do it. When I had worked there 2 years before, none of them worked in the company. So when I came back, these were all new people that I was trying to teach, one, how to use the software. I was trying to manage the department, also trying to delegate stuff, also trying to work myself, going to meetings all day. It was crazy. And so I got them up to speed, but while doing it, I knew there was capabilities within the program that we weren't using. And so that my original boss, when I was just an employee for that department, never let me go through and make happen. So when I was a manager, I had to do that. But again, had to get the new software, the new upgraded software. Had the new upgraded software. We then went on, and sorry about this tangent, guys. We went to the company. They gave us the newest software. Within so we did a current state, future state mapping of it. All the inputs, outputs that we needed. We needed like one thing from quoting adjusted to be a certain way, and boom, got rid of a ton of time. So we went from being able to do a brand new work instruction build, start to finish, in 2 days if we had all our inputs, for a more complex one. And it's variable. To being able to do it in 4 hours. Huge. So rather than needing 7 people, if we didn't grow as a company, we probably only would have needed 3 or 4 people still. Because again, we had taken on more workload. We didn't hire people. When I went back, I had 4 employees. When I left, I had 3 employees. And we had grown as a company. So we had invested in the new software, I think it was $900 per license a year. Actually, no, I think it was more than that. Oh, but we had a single license that was variable. So we had the new license. We then also had customer support, which we always had that anyway, for the software in case it had bugs or whatever. Um, and then we had the new software that originally I had them create for the one part of the job. That was a solid, like a straight number that we paid. That was like $8,000 rather than 20. So again, everything got better, and we saved the company. We proved out we saved the company well over $125,000 per year. Not to mention how much we really should have been at if we had grown the department. So even more than that, which equates to what? Millions probably over the course of a couple years. It also means you can bring in more business because you can have a quicker turnaround. Like it was, and I didn't even touch on that part. And as soon as we did the presentation, within 10 minutes, signed off on it. So it's all about how you present it. Business people, they see, yes, if you're saying, yes, it costs this much, but it's going to make my job easier. They don't care if it makes your job easier. They care if it's better for the business long term. They care about the short-term ROI. Depending on your business owner, short-term ROI is huge. So again, I was able to prove out 1 year we'd profit. 1 year. That's most business owners will take that, Like I've not met a lot of business owners who would turn down an ROI after 1 year. So you just got to present it right. And don't bullshit. I'm not a bullshitter. Not an ass kiss, not a bullshitter. I don't do that. I'm brutally honest. He said they were overpowered. I mean, glitter boys are powerful in an open field where you can see things 100 feet away. But you don't have to have that be where it happens. Glitter boys are so easy to negate. Tunnels, cavern systems that they can't get into. So many things. Where are you getting your power supply? Like, what happens if it gets damaged? How are you repairing it? Throw another big mech that can take them out. Throw something that has, stealth. Throw something at them that can hit them from further away. It's an RPG. Anything the players can do, you can do better. They have one glitter boy, throw 2 glitter boys at them. Like, it's so easy. And play the game how you want with that knowledge. Game masters have so many tools in their toolbox. So when it comes down to it, I believe in letting people play what they want and figuring it out after. If the glitter boy is outshining the rest of the party, figure out a way to shift the focus for a little bit. I played a techno wizard in our game, but he said glitter boys were overpowered. Yeah, that sucks. That really sucks. That bothers me. And you know what? There is, though, a time and place for that. If you are running a specific campaign or one shot, I think it's fine. If it's just a blanket rule you always have, that's where I have problems. I've done videos on D&D stuff that I've heard DMs say is overpowered. Druid Wild Shape Circle of the Moon, for example. Healing Word. Guiding Bolt at first level for clerics. Rope Trick, where you can basically short rest all the time. Like, there's so many things with that system people say are broken, and I've seen DMs say you can't do it. It bothers me. It bothers me so much. It's one of my peeves. But again, I'm not telling you guys how to play your game. Play your game how you want and how you and your group have fun. I just fundamentally disagree with ruling things out just as I think it's a lazy approach sometimes. Did you ever play Robotech? So good. I've never played it. Nope. Second edition, Nathan. I've seen the new one though. So I'm friends with some guys over at Strange Machine Games. My friend Josh is working on his own game system, but he put me onto Strange Machine Games. I have their Supers game. I have their fantasy game. I have some friends, I think, who work on some of the more board games over there, who are from my high school in Saline, that work a little bit with Strange Machine Games, as far as I know. Or no, I believe they worked with Robotech. Aaron Hanzowitz is one. Somebody else, I believe. has also got some involvement with the new Robotech, but I have not seen it or played it or any of that. Nathan Rumpf. I've played second edition 2 and haven't played the new one yet. It was my first introduction to anything outside traditional D&D. I'm not sure if it was a blanket rule though, so that's the case. I just wish I kept a few more of my BattleTech reference books. So, I'm not necessarily into like Gundam or mechs. I remember like, what was it, Mechanoid, or there was like a video game on the computer that you were a giant mech and you could like rotate the top while doing like your guns and be facing this way while you're running still backwards or sideways. Like I remember that. Gosh, like I'm talking like Windows 95 probably. I was probably in middle school, like 11 years old. But I remember that. And that was fun, but I've never been super into that kind of stuff personally. It's just one of those things. So, yeah, I don't know. I would love to try Palladium and things like that. So, I think it would be a blast. Robotech's great. Tim says, I just wish I kept a few more of my BattleTech reference books. Yep. I already read that. So, yeah. So, I guess when it comes down to it, guys, you guys can tell, especially if you know me, I do love Palladium Books. I think it's going to be great. If you are a fan of Palladium Books, I think you can be excited moving forward. I believe that things are going to be run the right way. You're going to still have Kevin's enthusiasm. You're still going to have his, if you really like the settings the way they are and things like that, you still have Kevin part of the projects moving forward. I hope the system isn't exactly how it is in a few years. I hope there are some major changes. I hope it's simplified. I hope it's something I can take and, introduce it to my children and they get it and it's something they can sit down and play within a little bit. That's what I hope. And I feel optimistic. If you like Savage Worlds riffs, they're still sticking around. So with that, guys, I am going to end the stream unless you guys have any last comments. If you want to carry this conversation over, head on over to our Discord where we talk about these things. There has been interest in playing a Supers game. There's been interest in a Riffs game from people. If you guys want to play Palladium Books, my Palladium Light, feel free to reach out. The easiest way to get into a game with me is through Patreon. If you're a $1 patron, they get access to pickup games. Like if I'm not doing anything that night, they get access to the random tables I talked about earlier. You get access to me more directly. I'm definitely more available, whether you want to send me a message there, email. If you're a patron, I'm way more available. Rather than all the DMs I get. I get emails, from potential sponsors all the time. I currently have a backlog right now of 11 sponsorships that I'm going to be doing different products for. I've got a 3D printed ship. I've done the dice bags. I've got all sorts of things that I've been doing. So different game systems. I've got Star Trek Adventures, which I'm pretty excited about. I've got Fallout. So I've got working relationships with companies like Paizo. So we've got a lot of things going on, and you can expect plenty of other content as well. So if you want to play, again, Patreon. Discord is your secondary chance. So if I was going to run a one-shot, say a game was canceled this Friday and I want to run a pickup game, and I don't have a game Friday, but if I had a game Friday, I would say, hey, I'm going to run a pickup game. I'd post it to my patrons. I've done this before. If I don't fill it within a couple days, I then go to Discord. On Discord, then I'll post it in my LFG. Usually, even before I do Discord, though, I'll be honest, I usually reach out to people I'm friends with in the content creation community, whether they're Twitch streamers, YouTubers, TikTok creators. I've invited some TikTok creators to campaigns recently. I've played in some one-shots with TikTokers. I always reach out to these other people. But then it's Discord. But yeah, Patreon first, and then I go there. So if you want to, those are the ways to do it. I also have an exclusive $40 tier on Patreon where we're going to be running We're starting off in a couple weeks with D&D 5e. We're going to do a session 0 character creation. We have somebody who's playing one of my homebrew races that I just created, a Harpy. It's got 3 sub-races, Coastal, Mountainous, and Swamp Harpy. So I've got those 3. I'm working on a dragon race that also is like a class. Think something like Rifts, but I'm not taking anything from that. Just the inspiration of being able to be a dragon is really all I'm taking from there. And it's going to replace having a class. So if you play a dragon, it works a certain way. It fills the race and class role and the background role. So you don't actually pick those things if you choose to be a dragon. So I'm going to flesh that out. Probably set it up based on the colors and the gems and chromatic and all sorts of that stuff. So I plan on having a lot of options for that. That'll be more extensive. But I have somebody playing a Harpy in that game. I will not have a dragon ready for a while. And yeah, so that's on Sundays. We have 3 players right now in that campaign. We do have a few more open spots. So again, $40 if you want to play with us. It guarantees you a minimum 1 game a month in that campaign. We're going to probably within a month or 2, once things get rolling, switch it to every other week. And by monthly, I mean every 4 weeks. So it's going to go from every 4 weeks originally to every other week after a little bit on Sunday nights. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys can tell how passionate I am about Palladium and all the exciting things I hope to see. And if you, again, just want to talk about it, just head on over to Discord and we can talk about Palladium for days. I've done it before and I'll continue to do it. This was Master the Game. I am Juce. Game on.